Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fireside Reviews podcast. I'm Cerebral Caesarian, and I am joined by our editor-in-chief and founder, Brick.
All right, hello, lads. Today we'll be talking about Guns Akimbo, which is a film in which Daniel Radcliffe starred, and I think the best comparison I can make is it's kind of like Crank, which is a extremely bloody, extremely gory, extremely combat heavy, adrenaline pumping film, but it kind of falls short of Crank in my opinion.
Yeah,
So
if
today
I...
we'll go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, if I had to kind of look at it as well, I think Crank is a great comparison. I'd say this is kind of like if they were trying to do Crank via the stylistic, trappings of Hobo with a shotgun.
Yeah, I'd say so as well. So today I think we'll be going like scene by scene because I have copious amounts of notes, and we can see where this movie succeeds and where it falls short.
Right.
So I'll start here. So the what do you call it? The film opens with this kind of like techno dystopian blue face with the screens for eyes, and it tells you about what schism is, and much like Death Race, yeah, it has a bit of Death Race mixed in, right? Because it's like, yeah, like human beings are terrible, and they all want to see death and destruction, you know. And schism is basically monetizing, you know, crazy people and basically all kinds of ne'er do wells and make them kill each other for views. So that's pretty much what this disembodied blue head says. And then we move into basically a commentated stream of uh, our main antagonist Nyx versus another person, and they're kind of, they're on a shootout. So yeah, like it's literally Death Race. The next scene is literally Death Race, except the guns aren't mounted to the cars; they're just kind of shooting handguns and shotguns. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the kind of stuff they're showing here as far as like the setup for Schism is like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Nerve before, but
No, I haven't. No.
yeah, this movie takes some inspirations from that, and that is also like an online game where you like try and climb the leaderboards for doing like violent or crazy things in public, and this kind of is like, okay, we're going to take that idea of like viral violence, and then they, like you said, ape the death race thing, and that they like, pit criminals against each other.
I mean, they're not necessarily criminals, but I'd say they become criminals in the process. It's usually just like crazy people with like mental illness sometimes. Things like
Right, yeah, maybe, yeah,
But
you're right. Psychopaths fighting each other.
actually, you know what? I take that back because later on, Nyx kind of looks up our protagonist's profile on a police car, and it says he has no criminal history, and that surprises her. So I assume like most of the people are criminals, like with some kind of police history.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
So yeah, so once we um so essentially the opening scene is like it shows a bunch of people kind of like tuning in on streams and things like that just to see people die, right? And then after that we are introduced to our main character whose name is Miles, and he's what do you call it? He's I mean I can't explain like really well. He's a geek, kind of a geek tech guy.
Yeah,
And
his occupation is computer programmer, and he spends his free time like doing kind of forum surfing and trolling.
and playing video games.
Yeah.
Um, so he does that, and he calls himself a code monkey, and he works for this like essentially like a gotcha game, I suppose you'd say. Um, and in the first scene already, you see the pop culture references when we're introduced to him. Like on his screen, they put posted notes that say "cuck lord." You know, yeah, and he says he's extremely good at trolling the trolls. And what he does is he goes on Twitter and he sees a bunch of leftists, right?
Hmm.
And like this is like extremely political. This part of the weirdly political because it need not be political. So he sees like a bunch of people, and he like one of the things that I saw was he writes, "Someone needs to punch you Nazi douchebags in the truck nuts," and that's it's fucking hilarious. And he basically just reports like a bunch of accounts that are, you know, who he believes to be Nazis. So it's extremely very topical, And then he sees like anti-vaxxers and things like that, and he reports them to Twitter basically.
It's yeah, and that's the thing. I wouldn't have minded that as much if it was a more consistent thing. That is like if it was more relevant to the film as a whole, but like after that moment, it just kind of like doesn't come up ever again.
I mean, it makes sense that it doesn't come up because he no longer can he no longer can use his hands.
Oh, well, sorry, I should be more clear, I guess. I mean, on a meta level, like the fact that they decide to throw in all this like super current like political commentary and then it's just not like a factor for the rest of the film. And I get it
Yeah,
that like, it's not necessarily the focus of it, but it seems weird to have that be like because mind you, this is the inciting incident that gets him into that situation, like his behavior for this, and then
and no,
it's yeah.
yes and no, because the stuff he does on like basically Twitter is kind of irrelevant.
Okay, that's fair.
What he does is he goes onto like the dark net, which is basically schism, right?
Right.
And he goes over there and he starts, quote unquote trolling them, which is, as someone who does a bit of trolling, when we do a little bit of trolling, he's pretty weak at it. Um, he just kind of insults them, and it's really not that. It's really not that. It's not good. It's not good bait. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, like look at this. He says he logs in on a guest account and he says, "You people are the worst degenerates. Come, like go to hell." Like, what does this? How is this trolling? It seems like you are pissed off at them. That's not the. That's not the. that's not how you. That's not how you troll.
Yeah,
You're not
no,
supposed
like
to be
anyone
getting
who's
pissed off.
like deep into trolling, they're just gonna like immediately like laugh and scoff and then immediately get ready to just counter with anything that's even a little more potent.
Like it doesn't matter. Like potency doesn't matter. Like he seems to be the one getting angry at them, which is the complete opposite of trolling. Trolling is you try to get them mad at you. Of course, at the end of the day, they do get mad at him. Which is not how it works. So then eventually the schism admin finds out where he lives, and they come and show up at his house. Oh, but before that, yeah, before they show up at his house, he gets a text from his ex-girlfriend, right? And he goes and meets her at the park. So this relationship is super weird to me. I don't understand. Like she is his ex-girlfriend, but she acts like his girlfriend, at least in the early sections of the movie. Am I right?
I would say if I had to estimate it, it's kind of like they had a weird kind of breakup and they're think it's like a on and on again off again thing. That's kind of my estimation because she's like a little bit interested in doing it again, but mostly not. he's kind of more desperate than her in regards to like he's he's really missing her.
Yes, but okay, listen here. She
Hmm.
invites him. Okay, she's like, okay, I noticed. Okay, let's break it down.
Mm.
Okay, she says she noticed him on her Instagram leaving likes, right? Which is super strange if you don't give a shit. Okay,
Yeah.
and then she's like, okay, and then she invites him to meet like alone, just like as two people, not as a group or just to speak in a park, and that's extremely like relationship-y sort of thing.
Right.
Like I wouldn't say like see if you're not like an account with like 3 Instagram followers, it's hard for you to keep track of who likes your stuff, you know. So the fact that she noticed already means that she's been paying attention, right?
Mm.
So I think she's definitely like interested in that way. So it was really strange. I thought anyway.
Right. And I'll say this, like, it would be maybe interesting to discuss some of this as far as like the dynamics of the relationship, but it's very, very shallow and doesn't play into a ton of the movie. So it's like, I would say for what it's worth, it's generally kind of a weak element of the movie. Because,
Yeah,
yeah, because like I could go into more stuff about like how like some people, even after they leave a relationship, still have enough chemistry with their ex that they can still like hold a conversation, be friends, still spark up stuff in the future. And I think that is what they wanted to portray. But instead, I honestly thought it was like a dream sequence. Like I thought, and
yeah.
I thought he had fallen asleep, and this was like him
Oh, hold
dreaming of
on.
like
Yeah,
a.
I think it is. Yeah. Oh shit, I made a mistake. Never mind. Yeah, it seems like it was a dream.
Oh, there you
Never mind.
go. That
Yeah,
that explains why it's so like
yeah. Why it's so
optimistic then.
weird? Then yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense. It is a dream sequence. I just looked it up. Yeah.
yeah,
So, okay. So after that, like the schism, people find their IP address and come over to his house. Okay, and so the one of the people who come over to his place is like the big dog in schism, which is like I don't know if you have like CEOs for underground and stuff like this, but he's like the main dude, I'd say, right?
yeah. He's the
And
evil group manager.
yeah, and if you and the other people who come with him are also very high ranking in the organization, right?
Yep.
And what I don't understand is why would the upper echelons of schism give a shit about some random guy posting mean comments on their like given the popularity people like him should be a dime a dozen, right? Like um if you grow that big with such a big audience, I would assume that people who come there and tell them that they're evil are like maybe 1 in 20 or something like that, like a huge, and since they reach like millions of people, you'd have millions of them as well, right?
Mm.
So why would like these people show up at his house? That makes no sense.
Well, obviously this is how the world works, Brick. Like when if I ever get suspended on Twitter, Jack Dorsey shows up to my house specifically to kick me in the nads, so I don't do it again. It's and well, on that note too, it's like, what if he didn't live in the same city? Like he happens to
What
live
do
in
you
the
mean?
exact same city where their headquarters is.
Yeah,
Sheer
exactly. Right.
coincidence.
Do you think they'd take like a train or make a road trip across America? Oh, speaking of Americans, Daniel Radcliffe's American accent is total shite. Like it's horrible. It's really not convincing.
Yeah, they should have thrown in a line or something about like his parents like bringing him here to America when he was like young, and he was like maybe like from Britain or something, and be like, oh, okay, kind of a mixed accent sort of thing. But they didn't. They're just like, no, he's 100% American. And they're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I don't understand this. I really don't like when they have like actors put on accents that aren't theirs. It really like first of all nowadays they don't do it really well, right? And you know, it just comes off like it kind of ruins your immersion a little bit.
Yeah.
The way they do that. Like, okay, why don't you just cast an American actor then if you want your character to be an American? Like,
Hmm.
why? I mean, I guess you've got star power, but it doesn't seem like many people want Daniel Radcliffe these days anyway. You know, considering he's really not in much big budget stuff.
And for what it's worth, even then, like just a throwaway line about him being British or something would have fixed that. Because I'm like,
Yeah,
I'd like to see him in stuff. Because like a crazy Brit in like I forget where this is set. It's like in like what is it, Detroit? I don't fucking know. But it's like some American city, guns taped to his hands, fighting off psychopaths. It's like, yeah, I could dig that. It's it just work with what you have, and I'm like, there's no way you had like a story in mind. It's not like, oh, this is a super nuanced thing. I'm sure they started with what if a guy had guns for hands, and then they worked the plot around that after the fact. It's like
exactly.
that's my
Or
interpretation of how they
guns,
made it.
or guns stapled to his hands. Anyway.
Yeah,
Okay, so no, so at this point, they find him and then they knock him out with like a trank dart, and then they staple, the guns to his hands, and well, okay, so here it starts going a little bit south, right?
right.
Because okay, so now they deal with a lot of the realistic, elements where like, okay, if you've got guns stapled to your hands, you can't pick up a you can't pick up your phone, you can't dial stuff, you know. He also, the other thing is, he fires off the gun and that um, screws with his eardrums and then he pukes, at this point. It's like, oh my god, it's so loud, you know. And then this doesn't come up again.
Yeah, it only happens the once, and he has like I'm pretty sure I remember this. He has like a movie poster of like Rambo in there, and
Yes.
so then he's like, "This isn't like the movies, you know. If Rambo, was like a real guy, he'd be deaf, or he'd have like tinnitus for the rest of his life." And I'm like,
Right.
that's fine, but this, and you said this as well. It doesn't come up again. That's kind of my issue. Is this movie is like starts off with this like, ooh, this isn't like the movies. This is real, but then it's like, okay, it's very, very real. So real that someone, a complete like maniac running a like social sort of like streaming platform about murder, decides to show up in person to staple guns to a guy's hand. And here's the thing, like they're not like surgeons. It's not like shown to be like a super sleek thing. It's like the fact that he doesn't like have like immediate like issues with like blood loss like halfway through the movie is astounding. And I wouldn't
What do you
normally
mean
make
by
that.
blood loss?
He's got guns stapled to his hands. Like he's got wounds all over his hands, and he was like beaten savagely. Like, so like his face would be bruised. He'd be bleeding out of his hands the whole movie because, like I said, they're not surgeons. They're clearly just kind of ramshackled together. So I assumed he would at the very least be suffering from like anemia or blood loss halfway through the movie, if not sooner.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
because
wouldn't.
there was just a couple of goons who did it, not like a surgeon or.
Yeah, and with that in mind, I wouldn't make that critique because it's like clearly a silly movie. But the movie decides to say, "Oh, this isn't like the movies. This is real life. This is realistic." I'm like, "Shut the fuck up! You can't, you can't do that. You can't just tell
Yeah.
me, oh, well, look, the guns make sounds and they're louder, and like, oh, they're not quiet like you'd think."
Yeah,
It's
Rambo would be deaf. And the other thing about realism is the guy has asthma, right?
yep,
So he, he needs to use the, what do you call it?
inhaler.
The inhaler, yeah. So
Yeah,
he needs to use the inhaler, but he only uses it twice in the movie. Like, if you're gonna give your protagonist a weakness like that, you better use it in the movie more than twice, and it should be a real weakness. He can't just be like going Rambo in the latter half, and you've just absolutely forgot the fact that this guy has asthma, and he exerts himself so much in the latter half, that asthma would definitely be a problem. And I say this as someone who had asthma growing up, you know.
mm-hmm.
So, like, if you exert yourself as much as he does in the latter half, you will absolutely need to use your inhaler. Like, that's so ridiculous that it doesn't matter, later on. So why wouldn't you just leave that out, right?
Yeah, and
Why
it's
would you
like
introduce something? Why would you introduce something and then only use it when it's convenient for your protagonist to use it?
yeah, and it's like if I was to draw a comparison, they had something not the same but similar to what we had for this in Wanted. I don't know if you ever seen that movie.
Yeah, I've seen Wanted. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
like at the
it's been a while.
beginning, yeah, at the beginning the guy's like, "Oh, I have panic attacks. I have to take this medication." And then they're like, "No, no, no. You're not having panic attacks. That's you having like a super reflexes kind of reaction to stressful
Right.
situations." And then that helps him as far as like aiming and shooting well. So it's like not to say that they should have done that with this, but it's like in that way, that movie introduced a weakness and then sort of transformed it into him overcoming that weakness. And in this one, it's like, no, he got over asthma in 24 hours because he had guns stapled to his hands.
Yeah. Right. So after that, we see, we're like introduced to Nyx more thoroughly, and she just takes out like an entire warehouse of goons by herself. And the the action is pretty good, I'd say. The choreography is pretty good in this scene. But the thing is, I think it devolves as the movie goes. Like this scene where she takes out a bunch of goons and there's like slow mo, and in one part like she punches a guy, and instead of teeth, kind of like Legos kind of come out of his mouth, which was strange because I didn't like there's no need to have Legos. I don't understand where the Legos come from, but say it's like a, I guess, a CGI flare or something.
Right.
But this scene is probably the single best action scene in the film. After that, it just kind of gets worse. You
Yeah,
know,
at other points, like, and like other action scenes tend to either be too short or not very exciting, or they tend to like, and this is mainly a thing, and I'm not trying to skip ahead, but like, for a point of comparison, there's things way later in the movie where they stop the action to make like jokes and one-liners and like comedy setups in the middle of a fight, and it kind of makes it jarring in comparison to this, where it's just like, no, 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 they're killing each other. Good.
yes, because like I understand that this is supposed to be kind of tongue in cheek, but you know, um, if if there's a tense moment, you're not really supposed to undercut it that much. You know, it kind of like ruins the tone, and it ruins the tension. Is we don't really care. Then it becomes just flashing lights. Like we don't care about our protagonist characters.
Right.
It kind of gives you a bit of whiplash the
Yeah,
way
because
they
like
kind of stop.
exactly, because there's a scene before when or sorry, a scene later which we will discuss when he's like interacting with like the drug lords, and it's like him being kind of comic relief in that before the shooting starts is a better example of how to do it. It's like comedy first, then action, not like swatching between the two like on a like every 10 seconds basis. It's like
Yeah,
you can
I think
peaks and valleys.
I think Crank did that a lot better because in that the comedy came from the action. It
Yeah,
wasn't like don't remember if it was the first one or the second one, but he kind of like sticks a shotgun up someone's arse, you know,
yeah,
and and that's just funny by itself, because he wanted to up his adrenaline, so he did something really crazy. So that's
yeah,
basically it. So then after that, we find Nyx in like a warehouse, and she's texting Schism. I guess I'd say, and let's say she's talking to the boss. Let's say probably, and she says that this would be her last fight, and then after that she's out, right?
yeah,
And the guy who's behind it says, I'm talking to my source, right? I don't know what that means. It never comes up later. Who's the source? Who's going to let her go? And why she has to? Oh yeah, she has to fight because her. Oh, the source would be the person who expunges her records, right?
Yeah, it's the cop who they kind of go into details with later. There's like a rat in the force.
Yeah, but they never really intended to let her go, right?
Yeah, never.
And the city is called Shrapnel City, so it's just a fake
Oh,
city. Yeah.
figures.
So then she dresses up as a cop and goes and looks up his record, and she installs a tracking device into his phone. And this is a really funny scene because it literally just has a checkbox that says, I have a warrant to access this number. You don't really need a warrant. You just have to click the checkbox and you can access anybody's phone from the police department. And that was fun. That was really fucking funny. So she just like installs a tracking device on his phone, right?
Oh yeah, because you could
So
just do that. It's like, oh, I'm at the police department. Time to remotely enable and hack tracking software onto his phone.
yeah,
And let's
this
hope
is some
let's
real
hope he's on
cartoon.
Wi-Fi. Boop.
Jeez. So then you see, now again, then now we skip back to Miles, and he has a really hard time like putting on his pants, so he just doesn't,
Yep.
and he puts on these really oversized, oversized like tiger paw sort of loafers that you wear at home, and then he takes his phone, and then he tries it, and then he leaves the house. And now, what do you call it? Then Nova shows up and starts firing at him.
I think the name is Nix. Nova is his
Oh
ex
yeah,
girlfriend.
Nick.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So he tells her that guns are stapled to his hands, and she's like, I don't care.
That's fair.
So
It's
just die. So just die.
Yeah, so then they have like a little like fight, and I forget the specifics, but it's basically like he just doesn't really know how to fire, how to shoot, and so then he just has to like go at his fire escape.
Yeah, he leaves out the fire escape, right? And then she no, okay. So again, with the realism thing, I don't know why, but someone who in the previous scene had like absolute accuracy just misses this guy running in a straight line in shoes that really aren't built for the road, and are like she just misses him all the time. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, like here's the thing, he's not really that athletic, so it's like okay, so he's a programmer who just sits on his computer and plays games all day, so he's pretty sedentary. So and he has asthma. So a sedentary asthmatic guy with no combat training or regular exercise or athleticism with guns stapled to his hands that is actively bleeding manages to avoid the psychopath who has been like the top of the leaderboards for the killing competition that's been going on for years now. And she just killed like what, like a dozen trained like killers or trained like experienced or whatever killers in a warehouse, and it's like, oh, but Danny Radcliffe has a couch. How am I supposed to how am I supposed to shoot into that?
Yeah, it made no sense because just the previous scene, she killed all these hardcore gang members, but it was really silly. And then so after that, he goes and he tries to get help from the cops,
Mm-hmm.
and he says, "I can't put down my guns. Please help me." And they don't listen, and they just kind of fire at him.
Yep. And they also have really bad accuracy.
Yeah, they also have really shite accuracy. But the thing is, what I don't understand is why didn't they listen to him? I guess I don't know. I mean,
Like, you know what
American cops. What
what
can
I
you
would
do?
have seen if they were like in a cop situation like that. Now, mind you, even when they're like really, really nervous about someone, they would have said something like, turn around, lay on your stomach or something. So like, and instead of just like immediately firing on them, because even if he says he can't put down his guns, you can still like turn around and lay down so the guns will be facing like away from you. Like I get it's supposed to be kind of grindhousey, a little bit like absurdism, but like but again, it's like this is real life. It's like no, the cops did not tell you to do that, even when they're have their guns trained on you and they're scared for their life. Like they just start shooting.
Well, and the thing is, they aren't even scared for their life because they kind of like stop and they say, "You think?" They look at each other and they have a short conversation,
Yeah.
and one of them asks, "Do you think he's a crackhead?" And the other guy says, "Definitely." So obviously, they're not scared for their life if they're gonna, have this like short conversation, and then they start firing at him when he starts running.
Right. Well, maybe I
Yeah,
should
so
say not scared for their life, but they have their guns trained on him, and yet they still miss repeatedly.
I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, if they're gonna have a conversation with between themselves, why don't they have a conversation with him?
Yeah, that's a
You
good
know,
point. Yeah.
it's really silly. And
Yep.
then, so then you have this like silly chase sequence, and he gets cornered by a cop, and by mistake, he shoots him in the neck.
Yep.
So, right. So then after that, what happens is, for some reason, he runs to the park to go meet Nova, and so and then he jumps into her car, um and he looks like shite, and she does she and basically Nix is after them,
Yep.
and she says, "Okay, I'm not gonna drive unless you calm down." So this scene really really pissed me off, like seriously badly. Like the whole thing, like, okay, I understand that she can't really help him at this point because he's supposed to be doing something else, right?
Yeah.
She's not going to be able to help him go to a hospital now because we need him to have the guns attached to his hands for the rest of the movie.
Right.
She can't go help him, can't take him to the cops. So obviously we need them to have a, what do you call it, a miscommunication and an argument here, right?
Yeah, they need to have a falling out of some sort because otherwise the movie's done.
Yeah, because otherwise the movie just ends here,
Yeah.
right? So it doesn't make sense. So like when you can see these kind of gears turning behind the scenes, and you're like, okay, so obviously, right? Obviously, they need to have a problem here, right? Because we're far too early in the movie for him to get any actual help.
Yep.
So he pulls out his. He. So this is the only time in which she helps him to use the inhaler, and then from now onwards, the inhaler just doesn't make an appearance anymore,
Yep.
right? Um, or it never really. The one thing I hate about the inhaler is that I think I've said this before, but it never really inconveniences him to have asthma, so it doesn't make sense to even have it as a plot point. So and see, obviously he's in distress, right? He's wearing clothes that he normally doesn't. He looks like shite. He's keeping his hands in his uh, bathrobe pockets all the time. So instead of having these obvious context clues that something is, and he jumped into your car through the window. So obviously something is horrendously wrong. And instead of picking up all of these clues, she says, "Well, no, you're a creep. You have guns. You joined schism." Like, it makes no sense at all. Like, it's probably the one of the worst scenes I've seen in this film, I would say. And she what do you call it? She maces him in the face when he pulls out the guns, and then she calls the police.
And I wouldn't mind this as much if she was portrayed more consistently, but the movie tries to make her seem like between the two of them, she's the more intelligent and level-headed. And
Yeah,
instead of maybe noticing, and here's the thing, I'm stretching here, the cops could have maybe been forgiven on the basis of, oh, we didn't see the staples on his hands because he was standing far away, you know? Like, you could maybe excuse that, and that's still a stretch, but you're sitting right next to him, and if he wanted to kill you or shoot you, he would have before when you're just sitting on a park bench, but no, you decide to see because he's 2 feet away from you, or even, no, you're sitting next to her in a car, you're 1 feet away, and she not only doesn't see that as the guns are clearly like merged with his hands, but then decides,
And
oh,
he's
okay,
bleeding on his hands. Like, okay, you can even excuse the cops by saying that he's too far away for them
yeah,
to see the staples that are like the bolts that put the gun right through his fingers.
yeah,
But she's so close, and she should be able to see that his hands are all mangled and bleeding. Like,
yeah. And so she should be able to see that, but instead of seeing that and being like, oh, you're in a really, like you said, piece together, you're in a bad situation, she just immediately is like, ah, like, it doesn't make, it would be better if they portray that more consistently. Like, if they showed her to be much more, like, you know, I don't know, scared of this kind of stuff or anything else. But after the scene, she's basically like, oh, I know Miles isn't a bad guy. Like, oh, do you now? It's, you just
you
assumed he wanted to
literally did
shoot you.
right. So then after that, we have a scene with the bad guys having a quarrel with the director because Miles jumps into like a like a Salvation Army um, clothes drop off bin, right?
Yep.
And the main baddie guy, what's his name? Actually, I forgot his name.
It's Richter.
Oh yeah, Richter.
Yeah.
And they have an argument with him because they want to train the drone on this Salvation Army clothes bin instead of on Nick's, who's actually the more active of the two, right?
Right.
And one of the guys, his name is Fuckface, and he has like a horse gimp mask on, um, which I found really funny. Um, so then they end up, killing the director and training the drone on the bin, which still makes no sense to me because it was honestly not that entertaining. It really didn't. It wasn't entertaining at all.
Yeah.
Him just sitting in the bin and then dropping a bunch of clothes out, and then you know trying to get them on and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So then you have probably one of the better scenes in the movie, which was so Miles tries to kill himself, uh, and he meets the funny hobo,
Yes,
character.
the funny homeless man who, according to Wikipedia, his name is let's see, what's his name in here? It's something funny. It's Glenjamin. his
Glenjamin.
his
Well,
name is Glenjamin the homeless man.
Glenjamin, yeah. Well, I actually know the actor from previous stuff. He's actually a New Zealand comedian called Rhys Darby, and he's acted in one of probably my favorite comedy shows, Flight of the Concords. He's actually one second. All right, sorry. So he's Rhys Darby, and he acted in Flight of the Concords, and he does stand up as well.
Yeah, and he's
um,
probably the funniest character in the movie by a long shot.
oh yeah, he's in my opinion the best character in the film.
Yep.
Like he tells him, no, you can't do that because the angle's all wrong. You're just gonna blow your face off and stay alive.
Yeah, because like he's not trying to tell him not to commit suicide. He's just telling him he's doing it incorrectly.
Rough. It's pretty hilarious. So he actually ends up helping him out, and well, before that, before all of this, we cut to another scene where Nova is with the cops, and this is where it's weird, right? Because she tells the cops that no, uh, no, Miles is a good guy. He can't do anything like this. When in the previous scene, she maced him because she thought he did do something like this.
Yep.
Really, really stupid.
Yeah, and and then these two are the cops who are going to be like pretty much the only cops we then see throughout the rest of the movie after that point. Like they're the main cop characters, and they're like, yeah. See, so then they're, and this is something that I thought was weird because I don't think it went anywhere. So they're like they hack Nova's phone so they can track Miles after she does this report.
Right, and that doesn't make sense because they can hack Miles's phone, and they should have seen that his phone is already hacked. So
Yeah.
why not just track him instead of her?
Well, the
Uh,
thing is too is like him and Nova never meet again for the rest of the movie, so her phone being hacked doesn't play into the story anymore beyond that point.
yeah, because then she becomes like the secondary drive for Miles.
Yep.
Because first is, well, stay alive so that schism doesn't kill you. The second is, well, they now have my ex-girlfriend, so I
Yep.
need to go and get her, or kill Nix and get stay alive, I
Yeah.
guess. So Glenjamin gives him like a really old hot dog, and yeah, so um, he refuses to feed him, and he has to like use the guns, and it's all gross and an old hot dog with like, mustard on it that falls on the road and shit. And it's actually just a funny scene, um, and kind of like gross out humor.
It's kind of like a like it's funny because of just how pathetic he is now, sort of scene.
Yeah, and then he calls out. So basically, he calls out Miles. Miles says, "Well, you wouldn't know anything about GPS tracking or some shit." And then he goes off on a tirade like, "How would you? Why are you judging a homeless guy? Maybe I had a big tech startup that went bust, and now I'm on the streets." and then and then Miles, kicks himself because he's a progressive boy and he shouldn't be making judgments about people. And then he's like, and then Miles asks him, are you?" And then he says, "What? Fuck no. I've been smoking crack." And okay, so the homeless guy kind of plays into this thing later on because whenever some stuff schism related happens, which is basically like violence and action, you will see a bunch of shots, cutting between people who are watching schism. And after Miles meets him, he ends up being one of the people, and he's like apparently watching schism. But then they cut they they cut to what he's looking at, and he's watching on like a plank with stuff drawn on it. So he's not actually watching anything. Yeah, I thought that was funny.
That's pretty good.
Right. So after this, he goes to his workplace and he gets his tech buddy to um, like have a switch on the tracker. You know,
Yeah.
and then Nick shows up at his workplace. Um,
And kills his
and
boss.
yeah, kills his boss. And then there's a kind of shootout, and then his friend shoots a Nerf dart at her head, which I genuinely enjoyed because the Nerf gun was set up at the beginning, and it pays off here. So it's actually good filmmaking. you know.
Yeah, no, that is a good like follow through. Like the Nerf gun had a better follow through than the nailer did.
Right. So generally with filmmaking, you have a setup and then you have a payoff. So if you like, they say if you introduce a gun in the first act, then it becomes used in the third act. So the funniest shit is this side character who doesn't really matter had a Nerf gun that he shoots at Miles in the first act, and then in the middle of the movie he shoots it at Nix. So the setup and payoff is actually pretty good.
Oh, it's great, and it's like, and that actually distracts her long enough for Miles to actually make an escape at that point.
Yeah, so you were right. The Nerf gun actually is more important to the story than the inhaler is.
uh,
But
that's so stupid, but I probably appreciate that a bit more if it weren't for the other issues that we're discussing with the movie, you know.
yeah, I mean, yeah. So then Miles gets into a car, and somehow he manages to start the car. I mean, I don't think he didn't start the car. I don't think, but
I
the
think
car
maybe
was
they left.
already running.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was just like he.
Yeah.
I don't
So
know
okay,
how he did that, but whatever.
this scene I didn't like because he manages to close the door with his gun hands, and he manages to put the car in drive and use the steering wheel when he's not even able to pick up his phone properly before. Like this kind of that's just weird. I thought like he
Like
shouldn't be able to have this much manual dexterity. You know.
like it would be better maybe if it was like something like an epiphany or a learning moment where it was something like, oh, I should use the guns as an extension of like, my hands, my arms, and then use that to kind of like learn how to work them into his like, handling of things. But he doesn't seem to
Yeah.
have that sort of like learning moment. He just sort of is like, yeah, like he's just like freaking out, and then he just goes, and it's like,
Right.
well, and like if the car, it's a good thing the car's already running because I'm like, good thing he doesn't need to turn the key to start the ignition, and that's if the key is already in the ignition in the first place.
Right. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up was earlier in the film, Nix like shoots the rocket launcher at the drone, right?
Yeah.
So she doesn't want to be filmed or something, but then she allows like a bunch of other drones to film her, and then Richter and gang don't really get mad at her for destroying their drones. So I would think they would get mad because, well, first of all, the drones are directly linked to their stream, and
Right.
thus, if, when you can't film the two of them, you lose money,
Yeah.
right? But so Victor doesn't get mad. She shoots like one or two drones during the course of the film, and Richter doesn't care, and but she allows a bunch of other drones to film her, so that doesn't really matter. No.
Yeah, and here's the thing: a lot of these issues could have been solved with like one-off lines. Like if they had just called like Nix right afterwards and said like, we'll let you get away with that one because it was entertaining and that got like a surge of like upvotes or views or whatever. But if you do it again, then like then you're out or something. Like a
Yeah.
warning to say, hey, don't do that again, because that would explain why she doesn't do it at any point in the future.
Yeah. Okay. And then we have another reality defying scene where um, the car crashes and then Miles is like thrown out, thrown out from the car completely. Except that
Yep.
that really doesn't happen in real life. You kind of you hit the what do you call that? What bag is that?
The airbag.
Airbag.
Yeah.
Yeah, because your legs are like so deep, because you're trying to work the pedals. You never really get thrown out bodily through the window, and then he falls into the other car.
Yeah. And so with that in mind then, we're talking about like just the amount of stuff that this guy goes through, and yet he's still able to pull this off. So it's like, so now he has gun staples to his hand, and he went through a car crash, and he doesn't get like any medical attention at any point during like the course of events in this movie until like until afterwards. And so it's like, all right,
Yeah.
the sedentary asthmatic man with no combat experience manages to not bleed out from the gun stapled to his hands and survives a car crash while being chased by psychos and assassins, and and that would be fine if they didn't keep trying to say this is like real life, guys. It's insulting.
I assure you, we would not want to be talking about realism in a movie that's this goofy, but they're the ones who put it on the table in the first place.
Yeah, they brought it up. So
yeah, so then okay, so Nix is fine, he's fine, and she chases him into like a building and then teaches him how to shoot.
Yep.
Which is really silly. Well, she's she's a cokehead, so you can't really. So then so after this we kind of have the single character development for Nyx, which is she doesn't like fire and she doesn't like explosions because her parents died in a car bomb. So, and that kind of makes her go catatonic. And then Miles kind of decides not to kill her, which again is really, really, really strange because, first of all, she tried to kill him. Second of all, if he kills her, he's out. He's just out. The movie just ends, and she's just sitting there catatonic, looking at the fire. You could have closed the movie at this point.
Yeah.
And it makes no sense for him to spare her because even after this scene, she chases him trying to shoot at him.
Yep.
So it makes zero reasonable sense for him to let her go.
Like, I'll say this. I agree, but for a slightly different reason. I guess it's like, I think what the movie wanted to do was to basically portray him as like sort of a pacifist character, that is to say, like, I don't kill, it's like my rule sort of a thing. And I think that would have been better if he didn't go on in the next set of scenes to kill so many people.
Exactly, because like they set it up kind of with the, I'm a vegetarian, I don't want to contribute to the death in the world, and then in the next afterwards he ends up killing hundreds of people.
Yeah. Like, just so many people in that, like, crime den, whatever you want to call it, for, like, the finale. And so, like, if he had, say, only went for non-lethal shots, or did, like, maybe some slapsticky thing where someone's like, ha ha ha, you can't hit me, and then he, like, maybe shoots a pipe, and then it swings down and bonks him on the head and knocks him out, like, if he went, like, non-lethal the whole movie, I would say that would be a fine moment in the sense of him sparing people. Because that's like, oh, he's being consistent with his values. But in this case, I was like, no, I'm not going to kill the people who have, like, we'll say the girl who's been trying to kill me for, like, the past, half a day. But as soon as I have a plan, now I'm going to kill all these randos in a warehouse. Like, it's...
Yeah, the thing is, they're trying to protect their warehouse, so he's literally the aggressor here.
Yeah.
So it's not even self-defense. Like, they have a reason to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And he killed them all, like, willy-nilly. Like, if he didn't go in that warehouse, they probably wouldn't be shooting at him.
No, of course not. They would not have at all. And, like, at that point, his only reason for going there is to get his ex out. So if he was trying to be, like, super pacifistic, he'd, like, find his ex and then leave. Because, like, he's not, at least at that point in the story when he spares Nyx, he's not like, oh, I just want everyone to live in peace. And he's also not like, oh, I need to destroy Schism. Like, he doesn't have that motivation until just out of nowhere later,
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even agree that he has that motivation in the first place. I think he only uses it because Nyx wants to kill Richter, but that's neither here nor there. Let's move on to the next scene, which
right.
is he FaceTimes. So we'll get to that when we get to it. So he FaceTimes with Nova, and then he says, "Look, I have gun stapled to my hands. And she's like, oh shit, I should have I should have listened to you back then. And then she
Gee.
literally says, and
Yeah.
then she's like, oh, I fucked up. Yeah, Jed, like if you recognize that you fucked up, it still does not spare you from making that fuck up in the first place because it's bad writing.
Yeah.
So while she's still on FaceTime, she gets kidnapped by, Richter and gang.
Mm-hmm.
And then Miles says some really simp shit, which is like, you made me a better person by being with me, which is probably the simpiest shit I've ever heard in my life. So, and then she's like, so then, so now the timer gets shortened. So they say, you can't leave, you can't talk to the cops, you can't get help. Um, you have now only 5 hours to kill Nix, and then we're just gonna start cutting pieces off your woman, whatever. So what he does is he turns on the tracking device in this like, oh, what's like a where cars go to get cubed. I don't know what you call those, scrapyard.
Yeah, scrapyard.
Yeah, and then he basically walks in on a drug deal, and so Nix shows up and what do you call it? Just like uses a Gatling gun and kills them all. And this is where I would say that you know the action scenes kind of get worse because um, like this was really not very actiony. She just mows down everyone, and
Yeah.
that's it. And
And I'll
then
say, for what it's worth, like before the kind of action goes out, I kind of like some of the comedy, where they're like, she was like, oh, I'm gonna kill all these guys, like she's like, you're in my way, I'm gonna kill all of you, and then Daniel Radcliffe is like, yay, and it's like, I still want to kill you too, and he's like, oh,
yeah,
just I. I know I enjoyed his very brief moment of glee
yeah.
at the thought of being saved.
Okay, so I want to talk about something else before we go on to the next set of scenes, which is the movie makes a point of counting how many bullets he has in each weapon,
Yeah, and they have
and
like a HUD like that shows the number.
which I think was seriously stupid
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't matter because so they start counting the bullets in his gun. So sometimes like once he accidentally discharges, one time he accidentally kills a cop, then he kills one of the gangbangers who's not kills the cop. Well, he shoots the cop, and then he kills one of the gangbangers, which is really his first kill. So they're just counting like in his right hand and his left hand how many bullets are there, but then it doesn't matter at all because after the scene where he goes to the Schism HQ and he shoots a bunch of people, we just have this new uh, this new number of bullets, which is really low, which is like three in one and one in the other. So how does it matter that you had 50 at the start and you're counting like 49, 48 when after this one scene you just go down to three and one? Like I think the only reason they had it was to introduce the HUD feature, I guess.
Well, you are correct. I'm gonna say I think what they wanted to portray is I think maybe have it be more of a marketing thing to say like, oh, he's only got like 100 bullets, and so they're like, like 100 bullets, 100 kills, something like that. At least for like trying to hype it up for marketing purposes, and then it didn't really come across in the movie because he spends like 70% of those bullets on just like
In
missing
one
people
scene.
and hitting the environment.
No, I think he uses 70% of the bullets in that one scene.
Well,
Just
right.
one scene.
Yeah, but he does spend a fair amount just kind of like, futzing around and like not actually using them for like the first half of the movie.
Yeah. So then we have the scene where he's taken by the cops, and one of them is Nix's dad, right?
Yep.
And the other guy is a Schism employee.
Yep, he's a mole for Schism in the cops.
Yeah, and he ends up shooting Nix's dad,
Yep.
right? So it also turns out that Victor was the one who set off the car bomb uh, that killed their parents. And I assume, yeah, and he set off the car bomb because this cop put him in jail.
Yeah, the cop was getting too close.
So then we see like a scene where Nix kind of like mouths off to Richter, and Richter does literally nothing, which is weird
Yep.
because like he's been shown to be extremely ruthless with plot armor, so he does literally nothing to her.
Yeah, no, he doesn't.
So
Like, he's weird because he goes either from I'm so angry that I'm gonna find this rando on like my comment section and like put him through hell just for very very light ribbing, and
yeah,
and then one of his own employees is like making open threats to him, and he's like, okay, sure, I suppose that's fair.
yeah. So now once that he's talked to the cops, he brings down the he brings down the timer to just 30 minutes. You have 30 minutes to kill Nix, or you know Nova dies. Now the problem with this is, for one thing, there's about like 30 minutes left in runtime, right?
Right.
And it makes no sense for him to be like, so there's this concept called jetpacking, right? Which is your characters kind of um, go from one place to another in a really short amount of time.
Right.
And Miles does that quite extensively
Yeah.
because he goes from like he goes to this. So at this point, we're saying, oh, he only has 30 minutes. So now randomly in the next scene, he's in a cyber cafe, right? And apparently he's extremely popular on the internet for being the guns akimbo dude, because we need to put in the title of the film,
Title drop. We did
title drop,
it.
right? And it makes no sense for him to be as popular as he is, really,
Yeah.
because honestly, he kills one person, he continuously runs away, and he's really not that interesting compared to the amount of action and violence that we have seen in Schism previously. Like, okay, I understand. Like, he has the charm of being a non-criminal, not dangerous, and just kind of fighting for his life. But I don't think that's I don't think that gives the adrenaline that viewers are looking for. You know?
Yeah, like if they were maybe framing him as like, like the underdog or the newbie or like or even better, there's one angle they could have done, which is like if he was super resourceful when it comes to outsmarting Nyx, they might see him as popular because he's a foil to the champion.
Yes.
But like here's the thing. Every time he gets away, it's by like sheer coincidence and luck. Like he just kind of bumblefucks his way out of his apartment and out of the car and out of his work. Like he doesn't have a super amazing plan. It just kind of happens that he gets away.
Yeah. So then in the next scene, he tracks down he tracks down the van in which they were supposedly holding next, and um, it's a red herring.
Yep.
It's actually someone else.
It's his buddy from work.
Oh yeah, it's the guy from work who shot the Nerf gun, and
Yeah.
he's the one who's killed. Um, so then again, he goes into this dirty alley, and he gets shot by Nova. And at this point, he's supposedly dead, right?
Yeah, that's what the movie wants us to think at this point. Yeah, and
And
but he's not. Ooh.
yeah, but he's not dead because because he put on the vest, right?
Yeah, the
Okay,
vest from the dead cop. Yeah.
right. So he puts on the vest from the dead cop so he doesn't die. And a couple of people. Okay, so the next part also makes no sense to me, right? Which is a couple of people put him in a body bag and take him to what is like a
Like headquarters, basically, just like the warehouse, I guess. Which
I'm
I
not
find
even
to
sure
be
where.
I, yeah, like I find it to be weird because I'm like, oh, he's dead. Rather than take him to, I don't know, a morgue or like some alley to dump him and hide the evidence or whatever. They're like, no, no, no. Let's take him to Schism headquarters because that's what we do with all of our
Or
corpses.
yeah, and like I would assume, okay, in the beginning when we are introduced to Nick, like the one warehouse scene where Nick kills like 29 people, which is said in the police report. So if
Yeah,
the police knew that she killed 29 people, I think there would be 29 corpses there,
yeah,
right?
that's right.
So obviously, Schism didn't move any of their bodies. So
Yep,
why is this guy so special that they move him directly into Schism
yeah.
headquarters, and then Nick shows up there for some reason. Like
Well, see,
I
that's
don't understand.
especially dumb because I'm thinking if the whole point of him faking his death was so that they could infiltrate the place, but she can just show up anyway, then what was the point of that? Because they only have the element of surprise for 30 seconds, like before he gets out of the body bag at that point.
Yes, and the other thing I don't understand is why Nix goes along with this plan because previously it was shown that she didn't care to listen to him. You know, she
Yeah,
doesn't care to listen to him. She just wants to kill him. But suddenly, in this scene, she does listen to him, and then she does see that her dad was killed. You know, because he had to lead her over to where her dad was killed. She didn't see.
yeah. Like it's
She
kind of
didn't see.
dumb because if she was someone to always be like patient and waiting before, then it makes sense why she's willing to like listen and be like, oh, Schism killed my family. Now I'll help you. But instead, she was always like, kill first, ask questions later with them.
Exactly. Like I don't think it even matters that he said that Richter killed your family because he could just be saying that to have her not shoot him.
Yeah,
You know, like, or he could say. I mean, it really doesn't make sense to me.
yeah.
So
I think at that point the movie's like, well, we need to finish the movie at some point, and she's like, she's got like top billing with him, so sure, why not? Okay, the friends, cool.
yeah, and okay, then no, so he spared her earlier. And this one schism goon comes out, seeing that they're both, well and alive and at their warehouse HQ,
Yeah,
and Miles just shoots him in the head nonchalantly. Like, okay, what happened to your vegetarian, whatever-ness? He
yep,
just doesn't care anymore. And then we have the shootout scene, which has like a bunch of people just dying. And again, this is not a good scene. There's really the action is just way too short. And it's just a bunch of guys getting shot. It's really just not fun. It's like I said, the movie peaked at the Knicks versus Gask warehouse scene.
yeah, I agree.
So actually, one thing I wanted to comment on was like banter between the two of them, which was I thought was pretty funny. Like their banter is pretty good. You
Yeah.
know, the chemistry and banter.
See, the banter's pretty good, and I have no objection necessarily to the banter, but like, there's a point during like this sort of like finale fight scene where Nyx loses a few of her fingers,
Yeah,
and the person that she's fighting with like decides to just like let her pause to say a one-liner, and it's like a masturbation joke or something, you know?
yeah. She says the weekend is going to be lonely, or no, the Friday is going to be lonely.
Yeah, and I'm
Or
like,
my Fridays just became very lonely or something.
yeah, and so like that to me is a very funny line. So I have no issue with necessarily the joke, but this is like again the movie's like this is realistic. It's like okay, so a woman's fingers are just blown off instead of being like in shock or just even just like screaming or grunting in pain. And so she's like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm gonna make a one liner about this, and also the person who just did like the finger removal decides to just kind of stand there and let her make a one liner instead of proceeding to kill her more.
yeah,
So he's like, I'm gonna pause and let you say something funny, and then I'll try and kill you some more. it's
right.
it's very fine in an absurdist kind of setting, which is it should be, but they keep saying oh, it's not. That's the whole thing. It's funny, but it shouldn't be like that.
Yeah, they should have just picked a lane, really.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the strength of this film comes from its absurdity, like not in the this so-called like meta self-referential. Oh, this is like the real world. And then okay, the next scene is kind of dumb, which is they find a couple of computers in the warehouse, and she lets him like do all the computer work, guns for hands, which is really stupid, I think,
Yeah,
because like okay, this is an absurd film, but you should also realize that the guy with guns for hands can't really type fast or do anything quickly on a computer, you know,
yeah,
and you have a goal, right, which is to get to. So he's like on the computer and he's trying to find out information about schism or something,
yeah,
which again doesn't matter. They don't even need to use the computers in the first place because none of that information matters. Like he finds out that Schism is making a global network instead of just in the Americas, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't change the fact that she wants to kill Richter and he wants to save Nova. So it doesn't really change the goals of our protagonists.
yeah. Like if they needed that information to figure out, say, like where Richter is, like oh he's hiding out in some mansion in Colombia or something, then it'd be like that would make sense why they need to dig through that. But it's like everything they need is here. They don't need to know about any of that. It's just like oh, yeah, and he doesn't even have that motivation to like take them down at this point. I think for what his character's worth, he's like, if I could just get my girlfriend back and go back to being a code monkey, I would be the happiest man in the world, And it's like that doesn't really follow suit for the rest of it because, well, before he's like, oh, I'm a vegetarian, time to murder everyone.
Yeah, she says Friday night just got really lonely when she fights with the Mohawk guy. And okay, so the fight with Miles and the black goth girl was really bad because he just ends up shooting her in the face
Yep.
for like no reason. He just manages to she stands on both of his hands so that he can't move, and she's gonna shoot him in the face, but or like and he just slips his gun out and then shoots her in the head. Like this is not compelling or entertaining at all.
Yeah, that's not like an outsmarting or like very competent kind of thing. It's just like a whoops, there you go.
Yeah, but I really like the Knicks versus Mohawk dude fight.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the way she she snorts cocaine to get a burst of energy. It was really funny.
Oh yeah.
And the thing is, it was actually set up in her original fight scene in the warehouse where she actually does sniff cocaine there to get a burst of energy.
Yeah.
So that's also another thing that was set up and pays off here. Uh, so yeah, so that fight scene was pretty fun, and then Miles comes over there and shoots gas cylinders, uh, causing an explosion. Obviously, the two of them survive somehow, and
Yeah.
then um, and then she makes a reference like, "Okay, so you've played video games before, so there's enemies here. That means we're going the right way." And then she says, "No, we've gone the wrong way. There's way too many enemies here." And then apparently she's strapped with like explosives for some reason. We don't know why.
I think the implication is that's like a suicide vest and that she always planned to like take them out with her. Although I don't know
Yeah,
why. I think that's kind of dumb given what we have here and her like general survival instincts up to this point, but whatever, that's what the
yeah,
movie
exactly.
wants. So
Because
eh,
up until now, she wanted to go with survival, and suddenly now she doesn't give a shit,
yeah.
and she only wants to kill Richter. So at this point, like Richter is absconding with Nova, and Nova kind of grabs a uh, like a marker and points Miles to go towards the roof.
Yeah.
Um, which, I mean, I don't really have any thoughts on that. It's okay.
It's a
Um,
fine enough thing. I mean, I he was going to get to the roof anyway, so if it's showing the idea of like her not just being like helpless or defenseless, that's or at least a smart way to help him figure out where to go. I can kind of
yeah,
accept that, but it kind of clashes with what we're going to discuss in the next scene.
yeah, because now he, so then now Richter is like saying that he has turned him into a hero, you know, because yesterday you were no one and today you're a hero, and you admit that you want to feel something, you want to be somebody, and now you are. Okay.
Yeah,
So
weirdly philosophical diatribe coming from the psychopath running the murder network.
yeah, exactly. Makes no sense. And then he uses his last bullet, and this is probably another really funny scene because he misses him by a country mile.
Yep.
That was a pretty great scene as well. And then so Victor shoots him with this really long revolver, and he what do you call it? Gets spun around, and then he gets up, and then he gets shot a couple more times,
Yep.
and he still keeps going. He gets shot 3 times, and so then Nova manages to get out of his grasp and kicks him and smacks him, uh, which really didn't make much sense. Like she just
Yeah.
kind of slips out from under his chokehold. Just so
Yep.
stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, then he ends up uh, he tosses Victor over the balcony. He puts he puts Nova's finger in his middle finger in his mouth, which was pretty funny. It's, one of the fingers that she. And again, this is not realistic because I don't see how he had the dexterity to pull it out of his pocket when he couldn't pull out his phone from his pocket before.
Yep.
So he pulled out something much smaller and shoved it into his mouth. And then we have this fake out, which is Nova and him kiss, after the thing, which is a fake out. But actually, he's shutting down. He's dying from blood loss or
Yep.
something. And it really, um, I think it borked the tone really badly because he says, "Yeah, I did kill Richter. No, that's not a lie. It's just the kissing that was a lie." And this kind of like meta self-referential thing kind of killed the emotional climax for me, I'd say.
Yeah, because like they say that she like went into shock or got like PTSD from that, and they're like, he's like, oh, so now I'm a violent, crazy guy, and like I didn't get the girl, now she has PTSD, and I'm no hero, and it's like, no, movie, you can't have this like really cathartic thing where like he finally learns to use his guns and kill and save the day, and then be like, no, this competent, stable woman just suddenly has PTSD after being like, I mean, here's the thing. It's not that like being kidnapped is like cool, but it's like, so you were very, very like briefly for like maybe a few hours like kidnapped. You're kind of manhandled a bit when like he was like dragging you to the roof. All right, and that gives you PTSD. But then Daniel Radcliffe, all right, everything that he went to from being shot multiple times, like broken ribs, car accident, like things stapled to his hands, all of this stuff does not give him PTSD. And I'm like, but you portrayed him as like the weak kind of flippant one, like, to be honest, the movie kind of makes him out to be a pussy, for most of the movie. And they're like, okay, but apparently the one who is portrayed as being much less of a pussy, his ex-girlfriend, just can't take the thought of, oh, you killed the man who kidnapped me? Wow, I can't take it. Like, no, I can't be with you. I can't be around you. You're bad. Like, what?
Yeah, and the other thing is, she was completely calm when she was, first of all, kidnapped, and then she was told that they're going to chop bits of her off if Miles doesn't kill Nix, and then she's like, "Oh, you only have 30 minutes, and then after that, we kill your ex-girlfriend and shit like that." So she is in mortal danger. She is apparently going to be tortured and you know disfigured, and bits of her are going to be cut off. None of this gives her PTSD, but her ex beating the shit out of the person who did threaten to kill you and dismember you is gives you PTSD. And then after that, she writes a comic book in which he's the hero. Like, what?
And see, that thing at the end about like writing a comic about him being the hero, that would make sense both in regards to like if they like say if they got back together, or if she at bare minimum was not traumatized by this event. Like, because it's like, oh, here's a comic about like, my boyfriend or my ex like going through like some really cool, like dangerous stuff, like based on a true story kind of a thing, But like,
I mean, yeah, because in her comic, it's actually Nova and Miles. Like, that's literally her name as the person being, and even her hair, everything is the same in that comic.
Yeah.
Right? So she's literally has a self insert in that comic. So obviously, how is this even, like, I don't know much about PTSD, but that does not seem to be PTSD to me.
It's, look, I've got a background in psychology. I'm not going to go into it because it's not really the point of this podcast. I'll just say their portrayal of PTSD is very inaccurate, and like when someone goes into shock, like they go into shock. All right, like when her being kidnapped, if that was the inciting incident, like she would have been like in a corner, like like knees up, like head in her own lap, like arms wrapped around it, and just like rocking back and forth, like trying to just not even process what's going on. At least that is a way that you could have done it in, say, film. That would have made it more clear to the audience that what she's going through is like this. And it's like, for what it's worth, and like, I'm not saying this, the movie's already very like violent and over the top anyway. The fact that she was sitting there in like this like seedy criminal underground stuff, and they didn't do anything to her. Like they didn't like roughhouse with her. They didn't try and make a pass at her. They just let her sit in a chair. Like, oh yeah, sure. There's coffee in the corner. Dinner's at 9. Like, I mean, not literally that nice, but the fact that they were like completely like not gonna do anything to her. Like I said, they didn't do anything. They didn't punch her. They didn't like toss her around. I'm not saying they necessarily should have from a Miles would want that, or I would want that, but it's like for these people being such like ruthless criminals who would do anything like, and they don't care what people think. Like, they are like, oh, I'm just gonna murder cops, but I wouldn't dare, touch this young woman who I've kidnapped in order to antagonize this guy who's trolled me. No, 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 no. We have principles now.
Yeah, she didn't even rough. They didn't even rough him up or anything. And then we come to the final scene of the movie, which is now his goal is trying to take down all of the schism outlets worldwide
Yep.
for some reason, which, well, okay, I guess. And then now we come back. Now we we come back to his what do you call it? His inhaler makes an appearance again. He uses the inhaler and then drives off. So that inhaler was completely pointless. So the entire movie,
It's so
it just shows.
pointless. It's and well, and here's the thing, the movie's like, oh, it's so realistic. It's like, okay, so he shot a cop. Like in that thing where he like accidentally shoots the cop in the neck. So it's like, okay, so he
Yeah,
shot a cop and dozens of other people and they just let him go, not even like a manslaughter charge. Like, you
exactly.
know, him being out of prison, I get they would eventually, because they would realize, oh, look, a big underground network. Obviously, you didn't staple your own guns to your hands, but like him not serving any time at
Anytime.
all for any of this is like, no, they would absolutely be willing to throw him under the bus, or at very least not fully understand, given the circumstantial evidence. And they're like, no, 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 he just gets to go be like an assassin for this global network of murder streamers now.
And actually, he doesn't make any reference to whether or not he spent any time. I don't think in jail. So
I mean,
so
he
maybe
doesn't
he's
make any
never
reference
even.
to it, but like the only thing we know as far as a passage of time is that his ex was able to make and publish a comic based on their exploits. So obviously some time has passed since his hands are all healed up and he's not in like the hospital, but
Yeah,
he didn't say something like, now that I'm out of jail, I can go get my revenge. He's just like, no, I'm just in a van and suddenly I'm competent enough to think that I can like kill all of these people.
yeah. I'm just gonna go on a what do you call it, a rampage, just to kill all of the schism outlets all over the world.
And I'm like,
And
he makes himself out to be like a hardened warrior after what he went through. And I'm like, dude, you spent one day with guns on your hands. And like, it was a tough time, but that doesn't make you like a good shot. By your own like remembrance, you missed at the critical hour. Like, you missed the shot that would have like saved the day. And instead, you had to like push him off and like use your gun hands to like smash his hands and make him fall off the roof. You're not some like super gun assassin. Just
yeah,
a
like that last scene shows that he still can't shoot at all. You know, so that makes no sense that he's suddenly like, even if his hands are healed, even if you know she made the comic book or whatever, that still doesn't make him adept enough, because even though we watched what, an hour 35 minutes of film,
yeah,
an hour 30 minutes of film, it's still in the film, it's only like one day, it's only 24 hours,
yeah.
right? So I don't think, unless off screen he's gone and done a lot of training, there's no way that he's become a big time assassin now.
Well, and the other thing too is, to be honest, with how much scar tissue he has on his hands afterwards, if the movie's trying to be realistic, the odds of him being a good shot with how much like that's the thing. It's like you can have certain things heal, but those are like ligaments in your hands. Those are like that's not like an easy thing that can just grow back. You know?
Yeah, it's gone through bone as well. Like the one that goes like straight through his hand, right? Is and like straight through the middle of his hand. That's like a lot of important ligaments go through the middle of your hand. Like, I mean, so
Yeah.
yeah,
So he would
the
have
very fact that
trouble. Like he'd have trouble writing
even
his own name after that, and then they're like, no, 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 he's a crack shot now.
yeah, and like the fact that he can even pull the trigger is already difficult. Okay, and see here, we don't want to be analyzing this movie from a realism perspective.
Oh, I never would have imagined it if not for scenes like there's like 2 or 3 scenes throughout the movie that are like, oh, this isn't like the movies. I mean, he explicitly says that. Like he explicitly says it's not like the movies. Like, you know, it may as well have like looked at the camera and winked. And it's like, no. Honestly, if I were, you know, in the editing room, or even if I wanted to make a fan edit, I would just take those 2 scenes out, or at least dub over the dialogue with something else. Because like both of those scenes aren't said by the characters like in the movie. They're like dubbed over as like narration. So
Yes.
I would just remove the narration of the parts where he says this isn't like the movies or this is real life, and just get rid of them. Because those things, to me at
And
least, conflict so hard with the tone that it's like the rest of it would have been fine. It would have been a really good, silly kind of romp, but that just, like I said, just kind of took the sails out. And like I don't need him to get the girl at the end to have it be a satisfying ending, but at the very least, it would have been good if they stayed friends, or she at least appreciated, hey, you saved my life, like despite the fact that I like maced you and that, like, you know, everything else, and you could have just, I don't know, saved your own life, what have you. You know, it's like you went out of your way to save my life. I am never going back with you again. Clearly, you're not boyfriend material if you save me from a murdering scumbag.
well, okay, but it's not just those scenes, but it's kind of woven into the plot in
Yeah,
some ways, which also again takes the sales out because like early in the movie when he shoots the gun, he winces in pain and his hands hurt a lot because of the bolts in it, you
yeah,
know. And again you have the scene where his ear, it hurts his eardrum when he shoots the gun. So all of these sorts of things kind of like come together as this kind of sub meta analysis of the film, which is like, okay, but we do want some elements of realism in this film,
yeah,
which yeah, like you said, it really like works the tone of the film just throughout.
yeah.
Makes
And
no sense.
like, it would have been better to go in either direction, or even if you just had one element that was realistic and the rest weren't. Like, I'll say keeping track of the bullets, I was fine with, because it's like, you know, oh, like most movies, they just kind of have unlimited ammo, and then they reload maybe once in a while if the editor feels like it. Um, you know, it's like I would have been okay with that generally, but they're not like that. You know, instead they just kind of pick and choose what should or shouldn't be realistic.
Yeah, and well, the other thing is like how he's like not a good shot, and then he becomes a better shot. Like that's okay. That's the kind of element of realism that I would accept. So to to compare this to another movie would be like Hobo with a Shotgun, which it just eschew realism entirely. It's just completely over the top action, and it's just blood and gore everywhere, and you're not expected to have realism there at all, you know. So
Yeah, none at
that
all. It's absurd that this like random hobo just decides to become a vigilante and then becomes like good at it, and then like everything else that happens, like, you know, you have like that, and like the, you know, like the Death Riders or murder cult at the end, and the like the way that they try and like torture them with him and like the sewer grate, you know, like
yeah,
it's
yeah, the sewer grate around his head, and they were gonna
yeah,
run him over. And
you
then
know,
like he wanted to buy a guitar, I think it was, but he buys the shotgun instead, right?
I think it was a lawnmower
Wasn't
he
it?
wanted.
Oh yeah, he wanted a lawnmower. Sorry. Yeah, so he wanted a lawnmower, but then he wanted a lawnmower so he could start his little business mowing lawns for money and then just get along. But instead, he buys a shotgun
Yep.
and then he just goes bonkers. Yeah, so that movie was a lot more tonally consistent than Guns Akimbo.
Yeah,
But
and for what it's worth, like I Hope with a Shotgun, it's not like the apex of these kind of movies. You know, it was just fine, but that's the thing though, is like it was fine because it had these like kind of consistencies, and this movie can't even have that. You know, it's it's
yeah, another
confused.
movie, another movie I could think of in this sort of vein would be Hardcore Henry. That was also really good for tone because like they made no pretense that the story was important at all. It was just like it was just action after action after action. It was just the story is like just a thread to hold the whole thing together. You know?
At that point, the plot for Hardcore Henry was more so an excuse for set pieces, because like when they started making the movie, they're basically like, because the people who made it were like some like Russian music video directors, and they said something to the effect of like, well, we just want a first person movie like our first person music video that we made, you know, and you can see the one on YouTube that they like sort of used as, I would say, the prototype for this. And so they're like, okay, we just want an action movie in first person, and like, well, what can we do with that? And they're like, okay, well, here's an excuse for it. Okay, here's some, here's some clones, here's some robots, here's some like helicopters and a conspiracy, and I don't know. And then you just then you just have really cool fight scenes, and that's all you really need.
And there's some parkour in there. It's all fun. So,
yeah, Hardcore Henry's great.
Like they don't expect you to really analyze they don't really expect you to like analyze the plot or anything. It's just like sit there and enjoy yourself and then eat some popcorn and leave. So it makes no pretense of being anything but entertainment. And I think in today's world we can really use films like that where that they know exactly what they're doing, why they want to do it.
Yeah.
And like there's absolutely, you don't need to make like high art in every film. You can make films expressly for the purpose of having your audience enjoy it. And I think Guns Akimbo kind of tried doing that, but they also took themselves a little too seriously, which is strange for a movie like this. So
absolutely,
I think the word of the day for Guns Akimbo is tone.
Yeah.
Like you gotta pick a tone and go with it. Do you want a gritty, realistic film about a guy in a bad situation, or do you want a kind of over-the-top action film? All about action and gore and blood and all of that. And to speak to the realism aspect, realism, you can't really cut it out with those two scenes. Like they show him like kind of like fucking around with his dick, trying to piss into the toilet, and then they show him not being able to wear his pants, things like that. And
yeah,
oh, look at this, we have thought about how difficult it is to have guns stapled to your hands, but then later on he becomes really dexterous with the guns in ways that make no sense. So like,
yeah.
Are you realistic, or are you going for this cartoony thing where everything is just adrenaline and emotional payoff? Because other than that, it doesn't, like, you can't screw with your tone in this manner.
Oh yeah, because like if the movie wanted to be feel good, that's fine. If the movie wanted to be more grounded, that's fine. But instead, the movie's like feel good for most of it, and that's like, no, you're a loser, and your girlfriend hates you, and you're scarred, and you're still an asthmatic, like, yeah, it's like that, it's like, hey, I just had all this really fun stuff. Do I get to have a cool ending? It's like, no, like, you killed the guy, but you didn't get the cool shot, you didn't get the girl, you didn't get to save the day. Like, it's just that's it. The movie just kind of wants to like kick you when you're down, and that's. The ending doesn't make a movie, but I'm like, considering how fun and frenetic a lot of the scenes were, as far as like making it seem like, kind of feel good in the sense of like, oh yeah, he beat the bad guys, and like he's not that great at it, but he overcame this thing. And then it's like, no, fuck him, bye.
Yeah,
and then it can kind of be, for me at least, the ending is not the only issue, but that to me felt kind of like that for what it was worth, because like, when I look at other movies with like good finales, as far as that, like it should emphasize the strengths of the movie, to kind of give you one last final push to be like, yeah, and then you have the, the epilogue to kind of like get you into the credits. But they didn't push that as much. They're like, hey, remember the beginning of the movie when we said there's realism? Well, we're bringing it back, and it's, I see that kind of shit in like horror movies, where they're like, oh, the heroes think they made it out alive, but oops, you didn't kill them, or oh whatever, and they're still alive, and then they get that. But like horror movies are supposed to make you feel that way.
Yeah.
This is advertised as like a adrenaline romp. It's like, oh, you know what I'd love to see in my like feel good action movies? The hero, passing out in a pile of their own blood, and then their and their love interest getting PTSD and leaving them.
Right.
Oh yeah, feel good movie of the summer, boys.
Well, the other thing I kind of wanted to talk about was when you were talking about, like, you remember how I said the film kind of takes itself way too seriously.
Yeah,
Um, when he was talking with the hobo, what's his name? Glenn something?
Glenjamin.
Glenjamin, the
Yeah,
right? So, and then suddenly they kind of try to give him character development there. They're like, well, okay, he's a vegetarian. This is he's a vegetarian and he doesn't want to increase suffering in the world and all that stuff. Like, this is literally irrelevant, and everything he does after that point uh, directly contradicts everything he said to Glenjamin, the funny hobo. Like, so why do that? Why is that important? Why can't you just have why can't you just have banter like he does with Nyx? And you don't care where he comes from, you don't care what he thinks, and it becomes more tonally consistent that way.
yeah, or even I'll say I do agree with you, but even if they didn't want to go that route, they could have said something along the lines of at least demonstrating to us that he is giving up on his principles because of the circumstance. You know, like something where it's like, oh man, I'm a vegetarian, but I guess this has to be done. Or if you want to even go more over the top and funny, have him be like fuck vegetarianism, then shoot someone in the head. Like that would have been
Yeah, exactly.
super cheesy and over the top, but it's this movie. Guy's got
Or
gun
like,
stapled
or
to his
like
hands. I'm not here for subtlety.
yeah, exactly. Like, so what if he says like, uh, or if he says something like "fuck vegetarianism," I'm gonna eat you alive or something like that, and actually
Yeah.
like bites into the neck of someone. That'd be pretty cool, I think.
Oh, like
But
I
that
would
would
have
be fun.
loved that or anything else. Like, would have been like, and again, this is over the top, but would have been funny if he's like, maybe he's surrounded by those like, drug dealer dudes, and he's like, oh man, like I'm sick of this shit, fuck vegetarianism. Then like, let's say he just like shoots some of them, and then he goes to like the nearest burger joint, and, like takes a bite of like whatever their equivalent is of like a Big Mac, and then he's just like, oh god, yeah, and be like, oh, this is what I've been missing out on, you know?
Yeah, like something like that. Like, the stupid thing is, cocaine, a Nerf gun, have more payoff than his character development and his asthma. Like, things that are innate to the character have less payoff, less setup, and less payoff than literally in like, cocaine and and a Nerf gun. Like,
Yep.
and don't get me wrong, even though it's just cocaine and it's just a Nerf gun, I think that's brilliant filmmaking. Like, a lot of films these days don't really have that. Like, if you watch MCU and stuff like that, they really don't follow the formula of setting up something at the start and then paying off later on. At least the later MCU films, like the earlier ones, did follow that format, especially the Avengers ones. They don't really follow that setup payoff format.
Yeah, like you can have a couple of things that are like good for that as far as like how to set up like different like knowledge or like conflicts within a film, and like the better ones tend to do it more often and then the worst ones don't, because like if we're looking at that as like a metric for like are you establishing a story in a way that is like intelligent and consistent, like one of the ones I dislike the most, like Thor 2, they don't have any of that. There's like, oh man, bad guy's going to show up,
Dark
let's
World.
yeah, Dark World. Yeah, and I'm like, he's just gonna fight the bad guy. It's like, what's going on? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Bad guy's here. Are we setting this up for the like sequel? Oh, we need a Thor movie between now and the next Avengers. Go fight that guy.
Oh my god. Yeah, Thor 2 is probably the worst MCU movie by far. Really.
And
Like,
like, even for what it's worth, even though I don't really like it that much, even something like Captain Marvel does a better job of like establishing something and then having it follow up later. You know, they're like, "Oh, be careful of that inhibitor chip, Captain Marvel. You know, don't want to push yourself too hard." And then later she like takes it off. You know, so it's like, okay, now I can push myself too hard, and it's like, you know, that's not a very like. I don't like the movie very much, but at least it sets something up and then responds to it later.
by the way, you will be interested to know the person who directed Thor: The Dark World, Alan Taylor, is a TV director mostly. So he's done like stuff like Deadwood and Game of Thrones and Sopranos. So he's very good at that. But the the films he has done in recent history was Thor: The Dark World, and then immediately after he did Terminator Genesis.
Ooh, that's
Those are probably the two worst films of this decade,
God.
or rather the last decade.
That's the thing is like, I really, really want to like Genesis more than it deserves. Like, that's the thing is like, I consider the movie a guilty pleasure, not because I think it's well made at all. I just enjoy it more than most people. So when people are like, "Oh, why do you like this movie?" I'm like, "Well, I like it. I'm not saying it's good. You know, it's shit, and you think it's shit." And I'm like, "Cool, we agree." I just laughed more than you did. It's
I think it's kind of like so bad it's good, kind of.
Yeah, in a
It's
way. And well, that's the thing
yeah,
too. For what it's worth, I probably would have enjoyed Guns Akimbo more if it didn't have some of these kind of like downer moments like that. Because like, you know, so bad it's good. I can kind of get into it for like, oh man, look at these things. But some of these things where they're like having him like in really bad situations that aren't necessarily the most funny, to me it's kind of like, oh, look at this tragic story where this like young girl's parents were like murdered, you know, and then it's like, oh, that's a somber thing I would see in a serious movie. And that's like, let me stick a finger in your mouth. And like, okay, it's I, well, like you said, tone is inconsistent, not that great for this. It's not even so bad it's good, it's just very flawed. And I absolutely had fun watching it the first time, but well, to be honest, I have no motivation to watch it ever again unless I'm showing someone to tell them how shit it is, like I did with yourself.
well, see, I wouldn't like yeah, and the thing is, the other thing I wanted to bring up was how the action is just kind of bad in the film. It's
Yeah,
just something I didn't like. The only two kind of action elements I really enjoyed was the first warehouse killing spree with Nyx, and again Nyx's fight with the Mohawk dude just before the final showdown.
yeah,
And so there was just like 2 points. Other than that, the action was really just not good, and even the humor was lacking. There wasn't much humor. I'd say like there were 2 points where it was really humorous. One was the line about Friday nights being are suddenly lonely, and the other one was the conversation with Glenjamin. So those are the only two things that I found legitimately funny.
yeah. And I chuckled at a few things here and there, you know, for like different scenes. But you're right; it's just not like the movie, as far as I can see, is supposed to be like an action comedy. That is, the action is the guns, the humorousness is, oh wow, look at how absurd the situation is. Um,
Yeah,
but then the action wasn't that great. I didn't find it particularly funny. And in the broad sense, like I can find movies that have either better action or better comedy or both, you know, like not that it's the same like premise, but if I would look at like Baby Driver, you know, Baby Driver is I think a much better movie in comparison in the sense of it's funnier and it has much
yeah.
better direction when it comes to their action, and it's not quite as absurd of a movie, but it just the central idea of it still presents itself as comedic in tone, and I would much rather recommend that over this.
Oh, Baby Driver is legitimately a great movie. Like
Yeah,
definitely one of the best movies of the last decade, I'd
yeah,
say.
and even then, that
Mm,
movie, for what it's worth, doesn't go out of its way to like push realism, and it still has elements of a downer ending like this in the sense of like, oh, just because he's a good guy doesn't mean he's not going to get in trouble for being a criminal, and that's how the movie ends. But it still has like an upbeat, like hope spot at the end, where it's like once he's out of jail, he can see his girl again, and it's like
Yeah, and
that's good.
it's it's technically wonderful as well, the way they weaved in his tinnitus and the music he's listening to into the scenes of the film. It's just, I think that was just brilliant directing, stuff like that.
Yeah, that
And
was very well
yeah, so
choreographed and good sound design too. Because any scene where he is not playing music, you can hear a very very faint like humming kind of beeping sound for the tinnitus, and it's like that's really like good attention to detail, like throughout the whole movie,
yeah,
not just in that scene, but like all over.
I think yeah, so I think there, like, now if we can compare, Baby Driver is, or rather, his name is Baby, isn't it? So Baby's tinnitus with Miles's asthma, the tinnitus pays off a lot more than Miles's asthma. Like, okay, the tinnitus doesn't really play that much of a role into the plot, but it plays a huge role in the way he navigates the world, and he it plays a huge role in the way the music is mixed into the direction of the scenes. So you're constantly like involved in the tinnitus aspect of it, and with the asthma, it doesn't really do anything. Like, another thing I would point to is, like, in the Da Vinci Code, who's that guy? Who's the main character in
What, Tom
Da Vinci
Hanks?
Code? No, no, not Tom Hanks. What's that? Yeah, Robert Langdon, right?
Oh, okay.
So in both the books and the films, he's shown to be claustrophobic, right?
Right.
And that really never plays a role in at least the latter films. It really doesn't make a difference that your main character has this flaw of being claustrophobic. Like, if you're going to introduce elements like that, you better have it pay off somehow, or actually impair the character, or just leave it out of the movie entirely.
Right.
Leave it out of the narrative. Doesn't make sense to have it in there.
I agree. Well, that's the thing. It's like there's a lot of things in this movie they could have done as far as like trimming the fat. Because I'm like, I didn't find a ton of like it's not that bad, but I didn't find a ton of value when it came to like humanizing Nyx and giving her this like elaborate, well, not too elaborate, but elaborate like tragic backstory. Where like it's like, oh, there's this big conspiracy between like the cops and that, and like setting her up, and like revenge against the cops for finding out the operation. I'm like, all this stuff, and I'm like, why does Miles care? Like, not to say that he's like apathetic towards it. He's not necessarily an asshole who's just going to ignore people's issues, but it's like, this person's been trying to kill me. Not to mention, she's killed many, many people, some of which are unquestionably innocent people, like, even over the course of the movie. Like, I mean, here's the thing. Miles's boss. Like, Miles's boss is an asshole, so it's not like we like him, but he didn't do anything that warranted him being murdered, and she just shoots him in the face.
Yeah.
So she's
And
like,
also those drug dealers. Like, okay, they're criminals, but there's no reason for her to kill them. Like, so relatively, they are innocent, quote unquote innocent, because they didn't deserve to die. They were just kind of like doing a drug deal.
yeah.
So
So
why
then the
did you
movie
kill
is
them?
like, woe is her. Her family died when she was young, and I'm like, okay, and like that doesn't mean that it's okay that she killed all these people. Like, it's not. She's not a good person. And like I agree that we can sympathize with her backstory, and she helps Miles at the end, so we can be like, okay, well, she's in line with our goals as an audience member. But like, I think it would have been a better route to kind of go with, say, not in the same way, but if I was gonna say, point to like Hobo with a Shotgun, where it's like the final baddies of the film. Like, I forget what their names were, but they're like the evil demon motorcycle gang. Like,
Yes.
they go out of their way to make them mysterious and like intimidating, and so if it was like, oh, you're being hunted by this merciless killer, who you have to overcome, I think that would have been better than maybe what they did, because now you have a mixed bag of like, oh, feel bad for this person who kills innocent people and has been the antagonist for the first half of the film, and
Yeah.
it's like, and she doesn't even have the good graces necessarily to spare Miles when he spared her. And
Yeah.
like, no one else who's operating in Schism would have like hesitated because they're like, oh, she's at like the top of the leaderboards for popularity. If I kill Nyx, then I'll be like, like a king of Schism or whatever, as far as like I knocked off the champion. So he had a golden opportunity there, and if anyone else was playing, she wouldn't have been able to afford that kindness. And instead of like acknowledging that, she's like, "Nah, I'm gonna do coke and try and kill you."
Yeah. It's honestly, yeah, just like I said, it just all comes down to tone and consistent. Like consistency is the problem, really,
Right.
because you're not consistently realistic. You're not consistently absurd. You're not consistently so somber, and you're not consistently funny. Like it has all of these parts in quantities that don't really make you like satisfied. Really.
Yeah.
And but at the end of the day, I'd still say like in a weird way, I think it's worth a watch. Like because we don't really get films like this nowadays, right? We get a lot of films that they they're like completely serious, and they're like completely taking themselves like as important films, right? And this I think this one doesn't really consider itself important, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's in a way it kind of bucks the trend of the films we've been getting in the past couple of years. This was what 2019, right?
Yeah, this is
So
2019, and for what it's worth, we're probably not going to get many more of these. Budget of this movie was roughly 15 million, and it made back approximately 1 million internationally.
wow, really, it was a huge flop.
Yeah, huge flop. Yeah.
Jeez. And the sad thing is, like, I think even though it failed, I think the movie still has a heart. Has a heart, you know. It's like it's not a. It's still a film that kind of oozes with character, because the like if you think about things that are not related to writing, for example, the like all the characters are kind of larger than life. You have these great sets which are like grimy, seedy, or they're like spray painted, and it gives the city a kind of like grungy feeling, right? Like everything is kind of like gross and disgusting, and I think they really brought that kind of character out of the city. I think that was great. Like I think if I remember right, even the clothes drop off is like filled with graffiti, you know. And then if you think about like the way the characters were dressed, the way the makeup artists made them look completely like bloody and like disfigured and things like that. I think that was it really harkened back to kind of like like the 80s grindhouse movies, I think.
Yeah, it
Where
kind of gave me feelings like not the same, but it kind of reminded me of like Mad Max 1 and 2, for
yeah,
like kind of not the same. It's not like post-apocalyptic, but it was definitely in the sort of like grimy, kind of scratched, used up kind of aesthetic.
yeah, maybe a little bit like Escape from LA, a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, so I think a lot of heart was poured into the film, but but unfortunately the writing was kind of fucked, and the direction was a little bit fucked. But I still think they tried their best, which is not something I would say for recent films, to be honest.
Yeah, I'll say for what it's worth to kind of agree with your point there. This didn't feel like a movie that was done like by committee, Like this wasn't a movie that was done by like a like $100 million studio, and then we're like, oh, this is gonna be really popular with like this demographic. I think they're just like, hey,
Yeah, it
let's
wasn't
make
focus
this.
tested.
Yeah, like not to say that they're like auteurs, like aspiring to their art form. I think they just, like you said, wanted to make a silly movie, and while they misstepped a few places, it feels sincere, even if it's
Yeah,
not great.
yeah. I think sincerity is the word there. And the other, yeah. So like, it doesn't feel focus tested. It's also R rated, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely R rated. And and another thing is it's not a sequel or a remake, which is which is really something that's going forward, I think.
Yeah,
because
everything is either a
because
remake, a reboot, a spiritual successor, a reinvention. It's
adaptation from a TV show, or like not TV show but like comic book or something like that.
yeah, it's always something. So as far as I know, this isn't like based on stuff. I don't think so, or at least I'm not aware of it. But yeah,
So yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of heart in this. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be like really based on anything. It doesn't say here.
yeah, I'm not seeing anything here, and I'll say this kind of to elaborate. Or sorry to jump off of your point from earlier. I do not think anyone should hesitate to watch it at least once, but I am in a position where I don't feel a need to ever watch it again. Like I don't like the value of movies for me at least is and if I find it to be worthwhile, I'll usually watch it multiple times, because I'll be like, "Oh, I can enjoy that again because it was good," or "I like that experience again." So, my favorites will have been watched multiple times, but for this one, it's like I don't regret seeing it, of course, but like it's not gonna be like, "Oh, I had an epiphany and now this movie's great." Like it's no.
Yeah, I think even though they missed, like, that's the thing, right? We still need films kind of like this where they're trying new things, they're trying to buck the trend, and they're that are like completely original ideas. I mean, it's not, no idea is completely original, but it's at least trying something new and trying to put something new out there.
Yeah,
Um,
or even if it's not new, we'll say at least something that is unconventional for the time. Because this movie, like you said, is kind of like a throwback to grindhouse films, and like outside of like one or two movies here and there, like an indie film, or unless Quentin Tarantino does another like grindhouse, movie again, then usually we don't get those common enough to where we're like oversaturated. Because like, well, for point comparison, we are very oversaturated when it comes to like superhero movies,
oh yeah,
so when we see that, it's like, I'm gonna make a superhero movie, and it's like, okay, join the club, join the 20 in line already, and it's like that. So then it's like, okay, how about the grindhouse movies this year? And it's like, you don't even have enough to count on your hand, and that's if you have more than one or two that come out anyways.
yeah, exactly. And when you if you want to know how saturated the superhero market is, we are even saturated with the deconstruction of superhero movies.
Yeah,
Like, we have The Boys, and we have Watchmen. We had the Watchmen TV show. You know, we had like like so many things. Oh, we had back in the day we had uh, the one with Will Smith where he played the drunk superhero. What was that?
oh god, I know which one you're talking about. I'm blanking.
Hancock. There we go.
That's it. Yeah,
Hancock.
Hancock. Yeah, so that one was
Back
kind of
in
a
2008.
yeah, that
Back
one
in
was
2008.
2008, and like there's other ones too that kind of like riff on like the different superhero stuff. And I'm trying to think of a few other ones off the top of my head, but like even with like the mainstream ones, some of them kind of try
Oh
and take the
yeah.
piss. Like
There's
Aquaman. Clear.
there, yeah. 1 second. There's the other one where this kid was basically like an alien Superman, but he was evil.
Oh
Do you
yeah,
remember that one?
I do remember that one. I don't remember the name though.
Let
It
me
was
look it up.
I think it was directed by who did the Guardians of the Galaxy films?
Joss Whedon.
Maybe. I think so.
I
I
feel like it's. I think it was Joss Whedon.
I don't
I
I don't
believe.
think it was him
Or James Gunn.
specifically.
James Gunn. James Gunn.
Yeah, no, James Gunn did that other one. That one that is the Superman being evil one.
Brightburn.
Yeah,
That's
that's
the
it.
other deconstruction.
Yeah.
So that was like superhero horror with this, kid being evil and basically being evil Superman. And then you have again in the boys, you have Homelander, who is also evil Superman. So, so really, we are in at the point where we are even saturated with films that deconstruct the superhero trope.
Yeah,
Like
well,
it's
Deadpool. I think about it, like
oh yeah,
a parody of superheroes.
Deadpool,
Yeah.
and you can even make the argument that the Dark Knight series deconstructed superheroes because it's kind of more gritty and more, realistic compared to like you know, the MCU style, high action,
Yeah, because at the time it was for the most part like when Dark Knight was around, the one of the bigger ones at the time, mind you, was the Spider-Man trilogy. Um,
yeah,
and so that was more campy, comic booky. So then they're like, okay, I'm Christopher Nolan. Let's make this a bit more grounded. Um, in that instance, and even this is kind of what I was leading into before, like Aquaman, is sort of like it's not a deconstruction of the series as much as the character's just kind of like I'm not going to take this seriously. Like as in like, oh, I'm not responsible. I want a party and like woohoo. I'm not part of your Justice League. It's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
taking the piss.
Then you have more deconstruction, which was like the like Glass. If you can think about Glass, and you can think about Split and Unbreakable. These are all kind of deconstructions of the traditional superhero format. You know,
Yeah. Dude, don't if we ever do another one of these relating to superhero movies, do not get me started on Glass. I really, really wanted to like that movie, and it was supposed to be really good, and then it wasn't.
I watched it twice, and I really did not like it. Oh,
Yeah.
but Glass made bank. Its budget was 20 million, and it made 247 million in box office.
Yeah. I don't know if they're ever going to continue it considering like critical reception, but like if it would have just been, it didn't need to be better than Split. As long as it was just as good as Split, I would have walked away like elated. But
Split was legitimately good. Yeah,
yes, it was great. I love that movie. And then when they had that stinger at the end, showing, Bruce Willis, and it's like him as his character from Unbreakable. It's like, oh my god, I was so hyped for it, and I walked out of the movie like dejected. Like it was kind of pitiful. I'm like, M. Night, this could have been your redemption arc. Like when
yeah,
people saw that he directed Split, they're like, oh my god, that was an M. Night movie. Like people aren't used to him being a good director these days. Because they're like, oh,
yeah.
Lady in the Water at Last Airbender. We're used to him being shit. So anyway, we're getting off topic. You should watch Guns Akimbo once. That is my recommendation.
I would say yeah. I feel like I think movies like these deserve support, but I
Yeah.
would not pay for a DVD of this because it's just not good.
Yeah, if you can
Like,
find a cheap
I can't.
rental or a free copy or something, that's fine, but I wouldn't pay more than a couple bucks for this. And I saw it in theaters when it came out. So,
Yeah, I absolutely would not. I wouldn't. I wouldn't make this a part of my film collection. You
yeah,
know,
definitely
I
not.
don't think it. I don't think it's just worth that much money. But I do think like if you can rent it or like watch it on streaming, you probably should once, and just to kind of get the feel of something sincere, which is like such a sad thing to say these days because nothing is sincere anymore in films. Like even though it's kind of missed the target, it's still extremely sincere. They put in heart, they tried their best, but it's just not good.
And if you want a Daniel Radcliffe movie that does a better job, like even this movie isn't great, but I think it did better than this one. Swiss Army Man, I think is a better Daniel Radcliffe movie than this, for what it's worth.
I actually don't think I've seen that one.
Uh, the premise, to be very brief, is Danny Radcliffe plays a corpse, and his friend washes up on an island with his body, and basically he finds that the corpse is immensely useful as far as like a tool for surviving on the island. So hence the title of Swiss Army Man. So basically the movie is about some other guy, I don't know the actor's name, some other guy using Daniel Radcliffe's corpse in order to survive on an island.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
And
That really
it's,
does.
and mind you, and you probably could interpret this from the title, but it's sort of interpreted as like a tongue-in-cheek sort of thing, because it's not like, oh, I'm gonna like cut off his arm and then use the bone as like a knife. It's like he uses him like a prop. Like the body just kind of like
Yeah.
flails about in like different comedic ways, and so he's like, oh hey, you're my buddy. it's very morbid, of course, as you can imagine from the title, but I think it's also a very unique film. Like you mentioned, what we should be supporting. It's just more in line with the tone and premise that it has compared to this, and it still has Daniel Radcliffe. So, ta-da!
Yeah. So I think I believe. Yeah. So anyway, the point being, I I think just the tone was just so screwed up in this film. Like I mean, I understand like we're kind of giving it a pass because it's sincere, but I think just tonally inconsistent and just generally trash. Like it, it's just not a good film. But I think I think a lot of viewers do see it kind of in a positive light, but mostly because of its sincerity and because it's so against the grain of films we got in 2019, right? So I think that's one of the reasons that viewers kind of look at it sort of positively, but on Rotten Tomatoes, it has like a 40% audience score. But then again, you know, um, so yeah, and it has a 52%, um, what do you call it? A 52% on critic score.
Yeah. So critics liked it a little better, but not by much.
Yeah. Um, the thing is, with films like this, you can, because they're kind of small films that people don't generally care about or like very don't have a very strong perspective on. I do think that we can trust Rotten Tomatoes on this one. So generally speaking, we don't like. Generally speaking, I don't think either of us would trust Rotten Tomatoes, but I think in this case, it's all right. Well, I
Yeah.
think I'll check Metacritic as well.
For what it's worth, I usually use Rotten Tomatoes as a tool to evaluate, we'll say, the general populace's reaction to a movie, and not so much like a grade of quality, because like it just does like percentages in that case. So it's like for me, it's not so much how much people enjoyed it, just how many did. And I think it would make sense when we're talking
Yeah,
about 40% of like, I think you are less likely to think this is a good movie than not. Uh, and same thing with critics. It's like it being at like 50%. It's like that makes sense for it being a divisive movie, because like you and I are talking about this. Like I don't think you and I are divided on this, but you and I have clearly have, we'll say, pros and cons for the movie that make it to where it's not an enthusiastic recommendation. We're not like, oh, this is so great, you should see it, you should get it on Blu-ray. We're like, no, this is really shit, but we laughed. So it's
yeah.
it's kind of like that, and
No.
yeah.
All right. So on Metacritic, it has a meta score of 42 and a user score of 6.3 on based on 88 ratings. So I feel like this is a little closer to what I think is the truth, which is people who critically analyze the film would put it like below par, and general viewers would put it like above par because just because of its sincerity and it's new, it's kind of entertaining in a way that it's not this processed garbage that we're seeing these days.
Yeah, for sure. Then, with that in mind, do we have any other, we'll say, I don't know, points to make for this particular movie before we wrap it up here?
You I think all the actors did a good job. I don't think we've talked about the acting. I think I think they all performed well. Any standouts for you?
Well, like you mentioned before, Reese Darby, I think was great as like a side character. But if we're talking about acting, I, I'm gonna say this: the movie's tone is where the default is that if you are a primary character or like a secondary character, you're going to be chewing the scenery constantly. You know, like the bad guys did a really good job of like smarming up how like evil and devious they were. That's not necessarily something that takes a ton of talent, but clearly they had fun. And
Yeah,
even though we kind of shit on his accent a bit, I think Daniel Radcliffe did a good job acting as like like this kind of like paranoid guy in like a really harsh situation. Um,
yeah,
accent aside, I think he did pretty good with what he was given. It's just this isn't like some Oscar worthy performance, even though they did good because like they did good performances, but how much was really asked of them?
yeah. So I think the guy, the main villain Richter, played by Ned Dennehy, he did a really good job because like he kind of like overacted almost in the guy like who played Captain Kirk in Star Trek.
Yeah,
What's his
I
name?
can kind of see that, and like I think it's good that he kind of hammed it up a bit, like Shatner. I think it was the
Yeah,
actor
like
for that
Shatner.
guy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so
Yeah,
like
Shatner.
him being like that, it kind of had like a sort of like old school theatrical villain, like, and that I'll say is a maybe a positive for the movie. That was refreshing. They didn't try and give the main villain some like tragic, nuanced backstory of like, whoa, I'm only doing this to feed the orphans. And they're like, nah, he's a sadist. Like,
Yeah.
like no excuse, no sympathy, no like, oh, morally gray. Nah, just he's evil. Kill him. And
Yeah.
he leaned into that. Yeah.
Except in the case of Nova, which was stupid.
Right.
Except in her case, like she's like insulting him to his face, and he doesn't even hit her.
And it's
It's
like,
really strange.
you're lucky that you aren't me from earlier in the movie, or I would have came to your house and stapled guns to your hands.
Exactly. Like he gets so pissed off at Miles,
Yeah.
Daniel Radcliffe, for for just leaving mean comments on his page. But when she's literally sitting there and calling him an arsehole, he does nothing. How does that make
Yeah.
sense?
And this would have been a very minor change that I think they could have helped. Like they led with him being a code monkey and a programmer. If Richter was under the impression that Miles was going to like say hack into their network and figure out like secrets that could lead to them getting like caught or prosecuted, that would make more sense as far as like why they targeted him and like wanted to like say punish him or discredit him, because like then it's like, okay, uh oh, look at this, he's a crazy lunatic, and so if they even if they find information on him, they could just write it off as him being just some crazy guy. But that's not what happened. That's not like a, oh, you're getting too close and we don't want you to discover our secrets. This is a, oh, you're being bad at trolling. Time time to make you our latest contestant.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
Just so silly.
Yeah, and I don't want to try and rewrite the movie as much as just because like if I wanted to rewrite the movie I could, but that's not my purpose here. I guess what I mean is very minor tweaks could have turned these things that are like flaws into, well, not flaws. It would just overall it increased some of the quality or consistency of the movie as a whole. And these are things I think that should have came up when they were doing like drafts, like you and I, when I'm making like my video content, like I submit a thing to you, you say, oh, here's an issue, let's rework this, and then we kind of bump
Yeah,
it back and forth until it's like acceptable for us. And I think something like you and I mentioned here for like what we see as issues probably should have been eliminated in like the first draft of whatever script they had for this movie.
yeah, and I think the reason that we're kind of making suggestions for rewrites of this movie is because how how easily it could have been turned into a great film. You know,
Yeah.
just like with these small changes that keep the tone consistent, right? Eliminate the need for realism, keep everything else the same. Just and then maybe cut out some of the somber scenes, and you've basically got a totally consistent, great little entertaining, popcorn flick. That's
Yeah.
the thing, right? Because like even though we don't, if it was a film, say that's absolute garbage, like for example Captain Marvel, right, which is absolute trash. There's really zero way that we can rewrite that film to make it good.
Right.
You know, because and throughout Captain Marvel, you have basically this Mary Sue character who's just fucking killing everyone, and you really have to go from the ground up to really turn it into something watchable. But with Guns Akimbo, you can just make these really, really tiny adjustments, or make some things a little more over the top, and you've got like a competitor for Crank, really, like Crank or Hardcore Andre.
Oh yeah, this could have been a great like modern successor for it. Like if they just kept up with some of these things and like just had it there. And that's the thing when you're looking at like some of these different movies that try and introduce new stuff into the genre for like who you're making for unique films. Because
Yeah.
there's a movie that came out either early this year or late last year called The Rhythm Section. Um, and that one was sort of like a I'm gonna call it a origin story for what they would have portrayed as like say a female Bond type character. Um, like as in have them start off like a civilian and then because of circumstances in their life they slowly start getting more involved in like like assassination and espionage and like these action set pieces and they become a character who's competent at it like through the course of the movie. Um, and that I liked the movie. It wasn't amazing, but I liked the movie, and it kind of flubbed up in a few ways. And part of it was like you mentioned, if we would have made some of these minor tweaks, or sorry, if they would have had the wherewithal to include some things that we may suggest per their own will, of course, by just taking a little more time to like smooth out these edges, it would have been great. But that movie bombed hard. Like,
The Rhythm Section.
yeah, let me look up the specific numbers on that because, yeah, no, it's a 2020 film, and
Yeah.
looking at it here, it had a budget of 50 million and it made back 6.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they had
See,
a
but
relatively good like marketing push for this, and they had some big names in it. It had Blake Lively and Jude Law as like the main characters.
huh,
Yeah, and it just didn't go anywhere.
that's see, but in a way, I kind of blame this. Like, I don't know about the film because I haven't watched it. Actually, I haven't heard of it until you told me. But I think, in a way, I think modern audiences have just become worse over time. I think modern audiences just don't want to see these sort of new movies, like just newer ideas. There's a reason why sequels and remakes of beloved things is a thing, really, because very few times you see films like Gone Girl or Baby Driver, right? So these very, very rarely do you see these films that are novel ideas and also make a killing, right? I think people would rather see than the next Iron Man 37 or the next Avengers movie. It's just the way audiences are these days.
I agree.
It's unfortunate truth.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. It is unfortunate. I wish there was a better way to kind of push for this, but it's also a matter of like it's I don't think it's even that's the thing I try and tell people as well when it comes to like people saying stuff. They're like, "Oh, how can you say it's bad if you didn't see it?" It's like they're not saying it's bad when they haven't seen it. They're saying they're not interested, or they're saying
Yes.
it looks bad, or that they don't think it's good enough to give it a watch. Because like, and here's the thing. I make it a personal principle not to give an evaluation of a film unless I've seen it. That's why when I joke and say like the Twilight movies are shit, I say I think they're shit or they might be shit, but I haven't actually taken the time to watch them because I don't care. Like they just don't look appealing to me. Um, and that's like what
I
we.
have watched them. They are shit.
Well, there you go. Thank you for confirming my suspicion. It's like that. So it's like I wish people would get off of that like kind of mindset of like, oh, you need to see a movie to say it's bad, or you need to play a game to say it's bad because you didn't try it. And like, no, fuck off. I don't have. Not everyone has the time or the money or the motivation to watch or try any given thing that you're like into or obsessed about. And if we're gonna, and here's why I bring this up to tie it into your point about, we'll say, audiences being bad. I think a lot of people have been kind of spurned by various like lackluster movies before. So in a negative way, they're a lot more selective about what they see.
Right.
So they're only going to see the stuff that's catered specifically for like this big, wide, like kind of domestic market appeal. Hence why, Avengers, Endgame makes $1 billion, because it's like, oh, here's this big marketable thing, and then there's like, oh, I heard about that and I'm interested, so they do that. Then you have something like Guns Akimbo, Rhythm Section, and they're like, all right, we're going to be a little bit different, and that, so even if they do hear about it, which comparatively they didn't have as big a marketing push as those, then they may be like, like doesn't
Like,
doesn't look cool. It's like, it's weird, it's different. They're not going to say, oh, the movie's bad because it's different. They're just going to forget about it. Like if you even remember it, when I try and tell people stuff about different movies because they don't hold the test of time. I remember having a weird kind of like flashback, like a painful flashback, because I remembered that the movie Nacho Libre exists, and I'm like,
oh
oh,
yeah.
yeah, I'm like, oh my god, that was a movie, and oh my god, Jack Black was in it, and I remember everyone seemed to talk about it on the basis of like, the memes, like Nacho, and like that's it.
Actually, right.
But I don't remember anyone who's actually like seen the movie or remembers what happened in the movie. They just know that Jack Black was like playing a luchador and he looked stupid, and and so it's like, where's your attention on that? And I won't talk about it here because it's for an upcoming thing, but it's like that whole eco thing I've been telling you guys about. It's, you just got to remember it, and nobody does.
Yeah, it's yeah. I think that's generally okay. Let's if you look at how much like movies have become industry really, like you should just look at the mind-boggling numbers of Avengers Endgame. It's just a 2-hour film, right? Or well, it's 3 hours nearly. So it's a 3-hour film, right? And it cost $356 million, and it made $2.8 billion. Like it's just 3 hours. It's just 3 hours of content. Like it's really kind of mad. It's really mad.
Yeah, it's insane how much money you can make from that, and that's why I got a lot of companies trying to hop onto that wagon and make that kind of money. Like Universal tried to do that with their Dark Universe, and then that fell on its face. And the only way for them to save the Dark Universe, which is to say, Universal wanted to make movies about their classic monsters, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, Frankenstein, Dracula, as a shared cinematic universe. Um, and they started with Tom Cruise's The Mummy. And I don't know if you saw that one or not. Did you?
Yeah, I did. I saw it twice.
What'd you think of it?
Sophia Boutella as the big bad villain person. I saw it twice. Yeah. I the thing I thought about that movie was, and this is true, I think, of many much content these days, is everything feels like a setup for something else. Nothing is really, you know, encompassing of itself. It's not just this is a thing, we want you to enjoy it. No, it's this is a thing, we're gonna put some things, some content in this, but we have this other content, these other ideas in our heads, but we are not going to put them in this. We're just going to indicate that this is going to happen later for some other content, for the next bit of content. So in this TV show or movie, we're just going to indicate, we're just going to point you and say, look, this might be a thing later. So pay attention. They, it's nothing is ever just itself. No. And you can see that with like the Aquaman movie as well. There was so much setup for other things. Maybe another Justice League movie or something like that. So it kind of ruins the taste of the thing you're enjoying right now, you know?
Yeah, it's like nothing can be standalone anymore. It's got to have a spin-off or a sequel or a setup and everything, and it's like, and it's rare to have that, and it's one movie in that line of thought that I would recommend is Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Oh yeah, that was a wonderful film.
Yeah, and that is one of the few movies where like the plot had a resolution where there was, say, room for a sequel, but it never implied to you that there was more story to be told. It wasn't like, stay tuned for Three Billboards Part 2, The Reckoning. It was...
Yeah, so...
It just ended with a lack of, like, we'll say, full closure, but you got everything you wanted out of it.
Yeah, and this was also a film that kind of makes me hope for audiences, because it had a budget of only 12 to 15 million, and it made a box office killing of 160 million. Like, so obviously, moviegoers did go to it and made it a profitable venture. So certain movies like this, we need to kind of encourage them. Like, this is true of Guns Akimbo as well. We really need to encourage these movies, so that we come back to that kind of like golden age of cinema that we had in like 1998 and 1999. I still think that 99 was the best single year for film in ever. If you just look at 99, it's just full of just full of hits, and full of standalone hits.
Yeah.
Like, it's a great year.
And in that same vein, because this isn't indicative of the whole industry, but I'll say at the very least, Universal may have taken note of what you and I are discussing as far as standalones can have a place in the market. Because when the Mummy movie that they did, that was the start of the Dark Universe, when that one did financially well but critically poor, they were like, okay, so this movie made over twice its budget, which is, mind you, by how much money they put in, that's not amazing, but that's enough for them to say that it was lucrative. They're like, this did okay. So what they did is, say again?
Are you talking about the Mummy movie?
Yeah, the Tom Cruise Mummy movie that came out a few, 4 or 5 years ago. And that one, basically, here's what they did, all right? They canceled the Dark Universe, and what that meant is basically they took off that branding from the projects that they had in development and then reworked them, because every movie that was planned for the Dark Universe was not actually canceled. They just decided to not call them Dark Universe movies, because The Invisible Man, which came out earlier this year, was the first movie that was like the follow-up. That was supposed to be the follow-up to The Mummy. And instead, it was a standalone movie. It does not make any reference to The Mummy or to any other of the movies like in the Universal line, and it doesn't imply that Dracula's going to show up. It's just standalone. And here's the thing, we're talking about like how to be lucrative with this. The budget of the movie is a surprisingly low $7 million.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really need to animate anything because he literally just doesn't exist.
Yeah, and here's the thing, though. That movie made $134 million against the $7 million budget.
God, and the thing is, the film is really shit.
Well,
it's a really bad movie.
You don't like the new Invisible Man movie?
No, I really, really hated it.
Okay. Well, that is fine. I really liked it, for my taste at least. But we don't have to talk about that now. We'll say, at least on one value. I think you guys can at least agree on the basis of it was better than if they tried to make this a shared universe movie with The Mummy starring Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just cut out all the references um to the dark universe, which was a good thing. But I didn't like that film. But you know, yeah. So movies like that can succeed. I think that
Yeah.
are kind of standalone, and the thing is, what movie studios want these days is a cash cow that continues to print money over and over again. So every film is not just this film, it's this film and then the next one. So just like Star Wars, like Disney bought Star Wars and then they're like, oh, now we're having this entire Star Wars universe. We're just gonna make huge like TV shows, spin-offs, prequels, sequels, you know, because we're gonna milk this for everything it's worth.
Yeah, because like for what I'm the position that I'm gonna say as far as like the conclusion I have for them as far as why they're in this rut for that is, or at least conceptually, it is risk mitigation. That is to say, if you have some movie that's like a unique thing that people haven't seen much of before or very often, you're running a risk of whether or not people are gonna like it or even show up to see it. But if you have a movie that's a success, it's like, like second verse, same as the first. They're like, oh, that thing worked. Keep hitting that button over and over and
Yeah.
over. So it's like when you have like Iron Man, that one, I really, really like the first Iron Man movie. It is exceptional in a lot of ways. And then Marvel's like, oh wait, let's just do that over and over again. And then Disney's like, let's do that over and over again, but worse. And so it's like, in comparison to what the characters were like, Iron Man was, well, he's the quippy asshole, right? And then you have like Bruce Banner, the Hulk, is supposed to be a bit more kind of reserved but emotionally volatile. You have like Captain America, who's supposed to be like a bit more like bland, but he's like patriotic and responsible. So like you have these different flavors of characters. And then you changed that over the course of time to where now everyone is making quips because they're like, that's what sells. Make everyone make jokes all the time. Don't stop. That's
Like that's what they did with Guardians of the Galaxy, but it worked there because um, what's his name is a really good actor. Like, who acted as Star Lord?
I am blanking. Like it's like Chris something.
Chris
God,
Pratt. There we go.
yeah, Chris Pratt. Yeah, and so you can have it work, but I guess what I mean to say is, in this case, you're basically taking something that worked once, and then they're like, I do not want to risk trying something new. It's better for them to say like stick with the familiar, and because they're like, if you want to look at investors, it's like, hey, investors, are gonna give me the $100 million for this movie. I want to make this unique thing, and they're like, okay, how can you prove to me it's gonna sell? And at that point, it's like, well, I can't. It's just an interesting film. They're like, okay, well, this guy is gonna give me a blueprint for Iron Man 7, and he can show me that Iron Man 1 through 6 made like $100 million more than we gave him. So, and that's sort of the thing. They're trapped more into the financial maneuverings of the industry than they are about an inherently quality, sort of piece or products, what have you.
Yeah, so I think we're getting a little too sidetracked and we're talking too generally right now.
Right.
So I think let's bring it back and close. So, what are your final thoughts on Guns Akimbo?
I guess my final thoughts are that I enjoyed watching it, and like even though some of the humor is a bit kind of cringy and dated, I still enjoyed the humor overall, and the action I overall enjoyed, but it wasn't particularly well made. So, for those of you who find this movie even a little bit interesting or curious, you should watch it once, but you are unlikely to want to watch it again. You'd probably find more value out of watching the things that this is a derivative of, like Crank or Death Race or Hobo with a Shotgun or even Nerve. Like, Nerve isn't even a great movie, but I think it is more cohesive than this. So give it a watch, but don't expect anything mind-blowing.
So for my closing thoughts, I'd say I think the film falls short of being a great film. It falls very short of being a great film, but I think if you make a few changes here and there, um, improve tonal consistency, um, choose which path you want to go down. Do you want to go down realism or do you want to go down absurdism or make it absurd? And I think they would choose to make it absurd because that's what most of the film is, and cut down on the self-referential. I wouldn't say jokes. It was just like it referred to itself so much during the film. It's not necessary, you know. You don't need to do that. It doesn't add to the film in any real way. In fact, at the end of the film, it kind of fucked the tone a bit by just taking away from the emotional climax of the film. So, but with few small changes, it could definitely be a contender for the kind of grindhouse, action-packed film, rivaling Hardcore Henry or Crank 2, or Hobo with a Shotgun, or even that one film about the train. Which one was that? The one with the train sorry, not a train. Was it a train with a bomb on it, and they had to go a particular speed?
You're thinking a bus, and that's Speed.
Oh yeah, Speed. That's it. It's called Speed.
I mean, there have been.
There's another one, the taking of Pelham 123.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, and there is another one. I think there also is another train movie called Unstoppable, and that one isn't where it's going to explode. It's just like the brakes don't
the
work.
brakes that don't work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I absolutely believe that it could be a great film. It's not. That's the only thing holding it back.
Right.
And I I definitely say you should take a look at it. But I mean, we've actually kind of spoiled the entire plot in this. So if you still feel like taking a look, you should. Um, and yeah, that's about it.
All right. In that case, thank you everybody for listening to our podcast and discussion regarding Guns Akimbo, and we will see you for the next discussion.
Yeah, which should be in a week or so. All right. Thanks for watching or listening, and have a great day.
Goodbye.